Story 1. Mom yelled at me to get out and never come back. So I left. Weeks later, Dad asked why I'd stopped paying the mortgage. My answer: shut them down completely. This happened 3 months ago, and I'm still processing it all. Buckle up because this story has everything entitled Parents, Financial Manipulation, Family Drama, and honestly the most satisfying ending you'll ever read. I'm using fake names obviously for privacy reasons, but everything else is 100% true and documented. I-29 male, and this whole nightmare situation started way back when I was a kid, growing up in this middle-class suburb outside Phoenix. My family was the definition of dysfunctional, but I didn't realize just how bad it was until I got older and gained some perspective. My mom, Linda, was basically a walking stereotype of everything wrong with entitled women who refuse to grow up. Picture this: a 45-year-old former cheerleader who peaked in high school and never got over it. She worked part-time as a receptionist at some fancy dental office, but only because it made her feel important and superior to work somewhere with wealthy clients. She'd constantly talk about the expensive cars in the parking lot and how the patients dressed. Dad, Robert, was this quiet, hard-working guy who managed a small warehouse for a plumbing supply company. Good dude, but completely beaten down by my mom. She had him so whipped that he'd just nod and agree with whatever crazy stuff came out of her mouth. I never once saw him stand up to her about anything. Here's the thing about my mom. She was obsessed with appearances and money, but had zero work ethic. She'd drive by these massive houses in the rich neighborhoods and complain, "Why can't we have nice things like that?" while spending $200 a week on her nails, hair, and shopping. She'd whine about being poor while ordering takeout 4 nights a week because cooking was beneath her. My younger sister Emma saw through the nonsense early and basically became a rebel. Started hanging with the alternative crowd, got piercings, the whole deal. Mom hated it because Emma wasn't playing into her perfect family fantasy. Me? I became the golden child by default because I was good at math and had natural leadership skills. But even then, nothing was ever good enough. Get an A? Why wasn't it an A+? Make the honor roll. Tommy's mom says he's getting scholarships. It was exhausting trying to meet her impossible standards. The money fights between my parents were constant. Dad would come home tired from working 50+ hours a week, and Mom would immediately start complaining about how they couldn't afford this or that. But she'd never suggest working full-time herself. That was the man's responsibility, according to her outdated mindset. I learned early that education was my ticket out. While other kids were playing video games or hanging out at the mall, I was studying and working part-time jobs. Not because I loved school, but because I knew if I didn't get out of that house, I'd end up as miserable as my dad. High school was basically me working part-time at a local restaurant while taking every advanced class they offered. I started as a busboy, but worked my way up to assistant manager by senior year. The owner took me under his wing and taught me about business operations, customer service, and management. Turns out I had a real knack for it. Mom would brag to her friends about my grades and work ethic, but then turn around and complain that I was becoming too serious and needed to focus on more important things, like dating popular girls and playing sports. I graduated valedictorian and landed a partial scholarship to Arizona State for business management. Between the scholarship, student loans, and money I'd saved from work, I could make it happen. Mom's reaction? Well, at least you'll make good money so you can take care of us when we're old. Even at 18, that comment made my blood run cold. College was like discovering I could breathe for the first time in my entire life. 4 years of actually being around motivated people who shared similar goals, professors who genuinely cared about their students' success, and nobody constantly telling me what I was doing wrong or criticizing every decision I made. I studied hard, but also learned to relax and enjoy life, made some solid friendships that lasted beyond graduation, even dated a bit and had normal relationships. I graduated with a 3.7 GPA and immediately got recruited by a mid-sized commercial real estate company in Phoenix doing property management and sales. Starting salary was $72,000 plus commission, which felt like winning the lottery compared to what I grew up with. Got my own apartment, a decent car, and for the first time in my life, I had money left over after paying bills. I thought I'd made it out of the dysfunction and could finally build my own life. I should have known Mom would find a way to ruin it. There I was, 23 years old, finally living my own life in Phoenix. Good job with advancement potential, decent apartment, actually had a social life for once. I'd drive back home maybe once a month for dinner, mostly because I felt bad for Dad. Those dinners were always the same routine. Mom would spend the first hour complaining about everything. Her job, the neighbors, how expensive everything was, how other people's kids bought their parents nice things. Dad would just sit there eating in silence while she went off on these rants. Then she'd start in on me. You know, Jake, now that you're making all this money, you should really help your family out more. Or, I saw Jennifer's son bought her a new car. Must be nice to have a son who appreciates his mother. The guilt trips were relentless, but I held firm. I was finally building my own life and wasn't about to let her manipulation drag me back down. Then 2018 happened, and everything went downhill fast. The plumbing supply company got bought out by some massive corporate chain that cared more about profits than people, and they basically fired everyone over 40 to bring in younger, cheaper workers who would accept lower wages and fewer benefits. Dad was 52, had been working warehouse management his whole adult life, and his resume was basically supervised the same warehouse for 18 years, with no college degree or specialized technical skills. He applied everywhere he could think of: Home Depot, Lowe's, other supply companies, warehouses, distribution centers, even retail stores that might value his management experience. But nobody wanted to hire a middle-aged guy with outdated skills when they could get some 25-year-old college graduate for half the salary and no health insurance concerns. After 6 months of constant rejections and "we'll keep your resume on file" responses, he was basically broken and had lost all confidence. Mom's reaction? Did she offer to pick up extra hours? Maybe get a full-time job? Heck no. She immediately went into victim mode, crying about how unfair everything was and how they were going to lose their house. That's when I got the call. I was at work, in the middle of showing a commercial property to potential tenants, when my phone rang. Mom was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "Jake, we're going to lose everything," she wailed. "The bank sent papers. They're going to take our house." My stomach dropped. I knew their finances were shaky, but I didn't realize how bad things had gotten. "How much do you need?" I asked, already knowing I was about to make a huge mistake. Turns out they were 4 months behind on their mortgage. $7,200 to bring it current, plus they needed someone to cover the monthly payments going forward. Their house payment was $1,900 a month, and with Dad unemployed and Mom only working part-time, they were bringing in maybe $1,300 total. I had about $15,000 in savings at the time. Not a fortune, but enough to help. Here's where I messed up. Instead of just giving them a loan or telling them to downsize, I had this brilliant idea to save their dignity by working directly with their bank. I drove over that weekend and met with their mortgage representative, showed him my financials, my credit score, proof of income. After some back and forth, we worked out an arrangement where I would take over the monthly payments while their name stayed on the loan. The bank representative helped me set up this story about a family assistance program to explain why their payment structure was changing. My parents totally bought it. They thought the bank was just being generous because of Dad's job loss. So starting in December 2018, I was automatically transferring $1,900 every month to their mortgage company. Plus, I covered the back payments to stop the foreclosure. I told myself it was temporary. Dad would find another job. They'd get back on their feet, and I could stop the payments. 6 years later, I was still paying their mortgage. You want to know what 6 years of secretly paying someone's mortgage looks like? Let me break it down for you. $1,900 times 12 months times 6 years equals $136,000. That's not including the $7,200 I paid up front to stop the foreclosure or the occasional emergency money I'd send when they overdrafted their account or needed car repairs. Let's call it an even $150,000 over 6 years. That's a down payment on a house. That's a new truck and a boat. That's financial freedom. Instead, I was living paycheck to paycheck while my parents lived in their nice 4-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood, complaining about their finances while I literally paid their biggest expense. The worst part? Mom got worse over the years, not better. See, once Dad lost his job, he kind of gave up. He'd do odd jobs here and there, helping people move, yard work, handyman stuff, but mostly he just retreated into himself. Started spending all day watching TV, barely speaking during family dinners. Mom, on the other hand, doubled down on her entitlement. Since she was now the primary breadwinner with her part-time receptionist job, she acted like she was some kind of martyr carrying the whole family. But here's the kicker. She also started acting like she was wealthy. New clothes every week, expensive highlights every 6 weeks, manicures, pedicures, facials at the clinic where she worked. She bought this huge 75-inch TV for the living room, then a new bedroom set, then redid the kitchen with granite countertops. And every time I'd visit, She'd show off her new purchases like she was some kind of interior decorator. Look at my new designer purse, Jake. I deserve nice things after everything I've been through. Meanwhile, she's behind on the electric bill, and I'm covering her mortgage. The comments about my life got nastier too. When I'd mention work stuff, she'd roll her eyes and say, "Must be nice to sit in an office all day instead of having a real job." When I started dating my girlfriend Sarah, Mom immediately started picking her apart. "She seems plain," was her first comment. "Don't you want someone who takes better care of herself? Someone who appreciates nice things?" Sarah was actually awesome. Worked as a teacher, down to earth, no drama. But she wasn't some high-maintenance princess, so Mom dismissed her completely. The guilt trips got more sophisticated too. "You know, Jake, other successful kids take their parents on vacations. Jennifer's son just took her to Europe." Or, "I saw the nicest Mercedes at the clinic today. The patient said her son bought it for her. Must be nice to have a son who shows his appreciation." I started dreading those monthly dinners. 2 hours of listening to Mom complain about money while showing off whatever new stuff she'd bought, all while I knew I was funding her lifestyle. My friends started noticing I was always broke despite having a decent job. I'd turn down trips, couldn't afford to go out much, drove the same beat-up Honda I'd had since college. They'd ask what was up, but how do you explain that your mom is basically a financial parasite? The relationship with Sarah eventually ended because of this situation. She couldn't understand why I was always stressed about money, why I couldn't commit to moving in together, why I spent every Sunday driving over to have dinner with parents who treated me like garbage. "It's like you're married to your family instead of building a life with me," she said when she broke up with me. She wasn't wrong. Work was the only place I felt normal. I'd gotten promoted to senior property manager, then to regional manager. My salary had gone up to $98,000 plus commission, but with that mortgage payment, I was still living like I made $60,000. I started keeping detailed records of every payment, every emergency loan, every dollar I'd spent on them. Maybe I thought I'd show them someday, or maybe I just needed to see the numbers to make it feel real. By year 4, I was having panic attacks. Just little ones at first. Tightness in my chest when I'd see the mortgage payment go through. Trouble sleeping after family dinners. My doctor suggested therapy. But who has time for therapy when you're working 50 hours a week and supporting your parents? The breaking point came last year when Mom started talking about renovating their master bathroom. $18,000 for new tile, a fancy shower, heated floors. She'd already picked out the materials and gotten quotes. "We're going to use the home equity line of credit," she announced over Sunday dinner. "It's basically free money since the house is worth so much more now." I nearly choked on my food. The house was worth more because I'd been keeping them from foreclosure for 6 years. And now she wanted to borrow against my equity to fund her renovation fantasies. That's when I realized this was never going to end. She would keep spending, keep demanding, keep taking, until I had nothing left. But I didn't know how to stop without destroying the family. Then came the Sunday that changed everything. 3 weeks ago was supposed to be just another difficult family dinner. I drove over like always, stopped at the grocery store to pick up steaks because Mom had mentioned wanting a nice dinner. Yeah, I was still buying the groceries too. Another thing she just expected. I walked into their house around 5 p.m., bags in hand. The first thing I noticed was a brand new sectional sofa in the living room. This thing was massive, leather, probably cost $6,000 easy. "What do you think of our new furniture?" Mom called from the kitchen. "I got it on sale, but it was still a good investment. We deserve to have nice things." I bit my tongue and headed to the kitchen to start dinner. Dad was in his usual spot at the counter, staring at some game on his phone. He mumbled, "Hey, kiddo," without looking up. What made this Sunday different was that Mom's sister Brenda was there. Aunt Brenda lived up in Colorado and rarely visited, maybe twice a year at most. Unlike my mom, Brenda had actually worked her way up from secretary to office manager at an insurance company. She owned her own house, drove a reliable car, took sensible vacations. Everything Mom claimed she wanted, but was too lazy to work for. Mom hated Brenda's success almost as much as she resented mine. "Look at you, Jake!" Brenda gave me a real hug when she saw me. "Your mom tells me you're doing so well with your real estate job. Regional manager already. Your parents must be so proud." I caught Mom's face out of the corner of my eye. That familiar grimace, like she'd bitten into something sour. "Thanks, Aunt Brenda," I said. "It's good to see you." While I cooked dinner, Brenda chatted about her recent promotion, her daughter's wedding, normal family stuff. But I could see Mom getting more and more agitated. Her movements got sharp and jerky, slamming cabinet doors, wiping down counters that were already clean. We sat down to eat around 6:30. The conversation was awkward. with Mom giving short answers and Brenda trying to fill the silence. I was actually starting to feel bad for my aunt. She had no idea she was walking into a minefield. Then, about halfway through dinner, Brenda said the words that would detonate my entire life. Linda, I've been meaning to ask, did you guys ever get caught up on your mortgage? I remember you mentioning some trouble a few years back. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. I felt the blood drain from my face. What are you talking about? Mom frowned. We had some issues when Robert lost his job, but we worked it out with the bank. Everything's fine now. Brenda looked confused. Oh, I thought Jake had mentioned helping you guys out when we talked last Christmas. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the air conditioning kicking on, a dog barking outside, the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Mom's eyes slowly moved from Brenda to me, and I could literally see the pieces clicking together in her head. Jake did what? Her voice was dangerously quiet. Brenda realized she'd messed up. I must have misunderstood, she backpedaled. It was just casual conversation. I probably got confused. No, Mom interrupted. Her eyes locked on mine. I want to hear exactly what my son has been telling people behind our backs. I set down my fork with shaking hands. After 6 years of hiding this, it was all about to come out. I wasn't talking behind your back, I said carefully. Then what were you doing? She demanded, her voice getting louder. I took a deep breath. When Dad lost his job, you were 4 months behind on the mortgage. The bank was starting foreclosure. I paid the back payments and arranged to take over the monthly payments directly. The color drained from Mom's face, then came rushing back like a tsunami. You did what? I've been paying your mortgage for the past 6 years, I said quietly. I wanted to help, and I knew you'd never accept it if I offered directly. What happened next was like watching a nuclear bomb go off in slow motion. I've replayed that moment 1,000 times, and it still doesn't feel real. The way Mom's face went through this whole spectrum of emotions, confusion, realization, embarrassment, and then pure unbridled rage. So you went behind our backs? Her voice was rising with each word. Made us look like charity cases to the whole family? Nobody knows except you, me, the bank, and apparently Brenda, I said, trying to stay calm. It wasn't about charity. It was about keeping you from losing your house. Our house? Mom stood up so fast her chair almost fell over. You mean the house you think you own now? Is that why you're always acting like you know better than us? Because you think this is your house? Dad finally looked up from his plate. Linda, maybe we should... Be quiet, Robert, she snapped. I want to hear this. She turned back to me, and the look in her eyes was pure venom. You arrogant little jerk. You think because you make good money, you can just swoop in and save us poor, stupid parents? You think we're too incompetent to handle our own lives? That's not what I thought, I protested. I just wanted to help. Help? She laughed, but it was this harsh, bitter sound. You call lying to us for 6 years helping? You call going behind our backs and making us look pathetic helping? You were about to lose your house, I shot back, my own anger finally surfacing. The bank was literally weeks away from foreclosing. Everything you worked for would have been gone. So you decided to play God? Her face was purple now. Decided that we were too stupid to figure it out ourselves? You couldn't figure it out. I stood up to face her. Dad's been unemployed for 6 years. Your part-time job barely covers groceries. Without me, you'd be living in some apartment right now. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Mom's hands were shaking as she pointed at me. How dare you talk to me like that? After everything I've done for you, everything I've sacrificed, you ungrateful piece of garbage. Sacrificed? I couldn't help but laugh. What have you sacrificed? You work 20 hours a week, spend money on stupid stuff constantly, and act like you're doing me a favor by letting me pay your bills. I raised you, she screamed. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me? By humiliating me in front of my sister? I repaid you by keeping a roof over your head for 6 years, I yelled back, while you treated me like garbage and acted like nothing I did was ever good enough. You want to know what's not good enough? She snarled. Having a son who thinks he's better than his family, who lies and manipulates and acts like he owns us. I don't want to own you, I was shouting now too. I just wanted to help, but you can't accept help without making it about your pride and your ego. She moved closer, her face twisted with rage. Well, here's some reality for you, you arrogant jerk. This is my house, my home, and you are no longer welcome here. The room went dead silent. Even the background noise seemed to fade away. Get out, she said, her voice cold and controlled. Get out of my house and never come back. Since you think you own this place, let me make it crystal clear. You don't, and you never will. I stood there, stunned. Despite all the fighting, despite how toxic she'd become, she'd never explicitly kicked me out before. "Linda, that's enough," Dad finally said. But it was way too little, way too late. "Fine," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "if that's what you want." I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear Brenda trying to mediate. "Linda, you don't mean that. You're upset." But I knew my mother. Once she made a declaration like that, she never backed down. I walked out the front door and didn't look back. In my car, I sat for a few minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel. 6 years of financial support. 6 years of putting their needs before my own. 6 years of enduring criticism and manipulation. And it ended with being thrown out of the house I'd been paying for. The drive home was a blur of anger and hurt. But by the time I got to my apartment, something had shifted inside me. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't their problem solver. I wasn't their safety net. I wasn't responsible for their poor decisions. I was free. And I was about to make sure they understood exactly what that meant. That night, I sat in my apartment with my laptop, staring at my bank's website. There it was, the automatic transfer I'd set up 6 years ago. $1,900 on the 15th of every month, like clockwork. My finger hovered over the cancel recurring payment button. 6 years. $150,000. And it ended with me being called an arrogant jerk and kicked out of the house I'd been paying for. I clicked cancel. A confirmation screen popped up. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? Get out and never come back." Mom's words echoed in my head. I clicked confirm. Just like that, it was done. After 6 years of being their financial life support, I'd pulled the plug. But I wasn't finished yet. I opened up a new browser tab and started doing some research. See, I'd learned a few things about finances and property records during my years in real estate. Amazing what you can find out when you know where to look. Turns out my parents had taken out a home equity line of credit 18 months ago. Remember that bathroom renovation Mom wanted? Yeah, she'd gone ahead with it, along with new appliances, a deck, and who knows what else. They'd borrowed $52,000 against the house I'd been keeping out of foreclosure. So not only had they been living essentially rent-free on my dime, they'd been using their fake equity to fund Mom's spending sprees. The audacity was breathtaking. I also discovered that Mom hadn't been working part-time like she claimed. According to public records, she'd been collecting unemployment benefits for the past 8 months. Apparently, the dental clinic had downsized, and she'd decided not to look for another job. So she'd been lying about that too. I spent the next week in a weird state of calm. No anxiety about the upcoming mortgage payment. No dreading Sunday dinner. No walking on eggshells around Mom's mood swings. For the first time in 6 years, I felt like I could breathe. My phone stayed silent for the first week. No calls, no texts, no apologies. The silence was telling. Week 2, the messages started. "Dad, hey buddy, hope you're doing okay. Mom's still upset, but she'll come around." I didn't respond. "Dad, having some trouble with the online banking? Can you help me figure this out?" I didn't respond. "Dad, the bank called about the mortgage payment. There might be some kind of error in their system." Still nothing from me. Week 3, the messages got more desperate. "Dad, Jake, we really need to talk. It's about the house." "Mom, I don't know what game you're playing, but it needs to stop." "Dad, please call." We received some papers from the bank. I maintained radio silence. They'd made their choice when they kicked me out. Now they could live with the consequences. 3 weeks after our fight, I got the text I'd been expecting. "Dad, the bank called. They're starting foreclosure proceedings. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long time. This was it. The moment of truth. The house they'd lived in for 20 years, the home I'd secretly saved multiple times, was about to be taken away. And you know what I felt? Nothing. No guilt, no panic, no urge to swoop in and save them again. Just cold, hard satisfaction that the consequences were finally catching up with them. I deleted the message without responding. The next day, my building manager called up. "Mr. Carson, there's a Robert Carson here to see you. Says he's your father." "Send him up," I said. Time for the conversation I should have had 6 years ago. Dad looked like absolute garbage when I opened my door. Hadn't shaved in days, clothes wrinkled, eyes red and puffy. He'd lost weight and looked about 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him. "Jake, thank God," he said, relief washing over his face. "We've been trying to reach you for weeks." "I know," I said, not moving to let him in. "I got your messages." He shifted uncomfortably in the hallway. "Can we talk? Please? It's about the house." I considered making him grovel in the hallway, but decided I wanted to enjoy this conversation. "Come in," He practically collapsed onto my couch, head in his hands. Jake, I'm so sorry about what happened. Your mother, she was out of line. She didn't mean those things she said. Which part didn't she mean? I asked, settling into my chair across from him. The part where she called me an arrogant jerk? Or the part where she told me to get out and never come back? She was just angry. You know how she gets when she feels cornered. Cornered? I laughed. Dad, I'd been paying your mortgage for 6 years. The only reason she felt cornered is because she got caught living off my money while treating me like garbage. He winced. We know you've been helping us, and we're grateful. Grateful? I cut him off. Dad, in 6 years, not once did either of you say thank you. Not once did Mom acknowledge what I was doing. Instead, she spent that whole time criticizing my life, my job, my girlfriend, everything about me, while I was literally keeping you from being homeless. I know, we messed up. But Jake, they're going to take the house. We got the foreclosure notice yesterday. We have 30 days. I leaned back in my chair, studying his face. He looked desperate, broken. Good. And you want me to fix it, I said. Yes, I mean, if you could just start the payments again, maybe talk to the bank. Like nothing happened? We'll make it right, I swear. Your mother knows she went too far. She's been crying for days. Has she now? I smiled. And where is Mom today? Did she come to apologize? Dad's face fell. She wanted to come, but she's embarrassed. She knows she messed up. So she sent you to clean up her mess. Again. Jake, please, I'm begging you. We'll lose everything. I stood up and walked to my kitchen, grabbing 2 sodas. I handed one to Dad and sat back down. Let me tell you what's going to happen, I said calmly. You're going to lose the house. You're going to have to declare bankruptcy because of that home equity loan you took out. Mom's going to have to get a real job for the first time in her adult life. And you're both going to learn what it's like to live without someone else paying your bills. Dad's face went white. Jake, you can't mean that. I absolutely mean that. I took a sip of my soda. See, I've had 3 weeks to think about this. 3 weeks to really examine our relationship. And you know what I realized? He shook his head, looking like he might throw up. I realized that for 6 years, I enabled Mom's entitled behavior. I made it possible for her to live in a fantasy world where she could spend money she didn't have and treat people like garbage without consequences. I was so worried about being a good son that I forgot to have any self-respect. But we're family. Family? I laughed. Dad, when's the last time either of you asked how I was doing? When's the last time Mom said something nice about my life? When's the last time you stood up for me when she was being awful? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. That's what I thought. See, I spent $150,000 over 6 years keeping you afloat. You want to know what I could have bought with that money? A house? A new truck? Heck, I could have taken a year off work and traveled the world. Instead, I was living paycheck to paycheck while Mom bought designer purses and renovated bathrooms. We didn't know. Nonsense. My voice was getting harder. You knew exactly what was happening. You just didn't care as long as someone else was paying the bills. Dad started crying then. Not just tearing up, but full-on sobbing. Please, Jake, I'm sorry. We're both sorry. Just, please don't let us lose everything. You already lost everything, I said coldly. You lost at the moment Mom decided her pride was more important than keeping me in your lives. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Phoenix skyline. You know what the funny part is? I probably would have kept paying if you'd just treated me with basic respect. If Mom had said thank you once in a while, instead of constantly criticizing me. If you'd stood up for me instead of being a coward. I'll make her apologize, he said desperately. She'll get on her knees and beg if that's what you want. It's too late for that. I turned back to face him. See, I've moved on. I'm dating someone new. A great woman who actually appreciates me. I'm saving money for the first time in years. I'm building my own life instead of subsidizing yours. Dad was still crying, but now there was panic in his eyes. What are we supposed to do? Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore, I said simply. You're both adults. Figure it out. Jake, please. Your mother is scared. She doesn't know how to live without that house. Then maybe she should have thought about that before she kicked me out of it. I walked over and opened my front door. This conversation is over, Dad. You need to leave. He stood up slowly, like an old man. Jake, I'm begging you. One more chance, please. You had 6 years of chances, I said. You blew every single one? He walked to the door, then turned back. What if your mother calls you? What if she apologizes? She won't, I said. And even if she does, it won't matter. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned. After he left, I sat in my apartment feeling better than I had in years. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Jake, please call me. I'm sorry. I need to talk to you. I deleted it without reading the whole thing. Then another. Please don't let them take our house. I'll do anything. Delete. Another. I was wrong. You're a good son. Please help us. Delete. By the end of the night, she'd sent 15 messages, each one more desperate than the last. I deleted them all. 2 days later, I drove by their house on my way to a client meeting. There was a foreclosure notice taped to the front door and a for sale by owner sign in the yard. I slowed down just enough to see Mom standing in the front window, watching me drive by. She looked smaller somehow, older. When she saw my car, she ran outside and started waving her arms, trying to get me to stop. I didn't even slow down. In my rearview mirror, I watched her collapse on the front lawn, sobbing, and I felt absolutely nothing. 6 months later, I heard through the family grapevine that they'd lost the house and were living in a one-bedroom apartment across town. Dad was working at a grocery store, and Mom had finally gotten a job at a call center. They'd invited me to Christmas dinner at their new place. I had other plans. Some people might say I went too far, that I should have forgiven them and been the bigger person. But you know what? For the first time in my adult life, I'm truly happy and at peace. I'm engaged to Sarah. Yeah, we got back together after I got my life sorted out. I bought my own house, and I sleep peacefully every night knowing I'm not being used or manipulated. Mom still sends me birthday cards and texts on holidays, always with the same message: I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you. I throw them away without opening them. Some bridges deserve to stay burned forever, and some lessons can only be learned the hard way through real consequences. My parents learned that actions have consequences, and I learned that family doesn't give you the right to be anyone's doormat. Best trade I ever made in my entire life. Story 2. We don't take sides, my parents said, while hosting my ex-wife and my brother at Sunday dinner after they destroyed my marriage. Fine, I don't take sides either. When the mortgage is due, they took a side real quick after that. Hey everyone, I-34. Mail need to get this whole mess off my chest. Fair warning, this is going to be long, but I promise it's worth it. This whole situation has been eating at me for months, and honestly, writing it down is the only way I can process what happened with my family. So here's the setup. I've got a younger brother, let's call him Derek. He's 31, and we used to be pretty close growing up. Not like best friends or anything, but we got along. Played video games together, went to each other's high school events, normal brother stuff. Our parents, both in their early 60s now, always made a big deal about treating us equally. Everything had to be fair. Same birthday budget, same Christmas presents, same college fund amounts. You get the idea. I married my ex-wife, I'll call her Madison, when I was 28. We'd been together since college, and I genuinely thought she was the one. She was smart, funny, ambitious, had this infectious laugh that could light up a room. We had this whole life planned out. The career paths, the house in the suburbs, eventually 2 kids and a dog. The whole package that you're supposed to want, you know? Madison worked in marketing at this tech startup downtown. Long hours, lots of networking events, team building activities, the usual startup culture stuff. But the money was good and she loved it. Said she was building something real, something that mattered. I'm a civil engineer, which means steady work, decent pay, but nothing flashy. I design bridges and highway systems. Important work, but not the kind of thing people get excited about at parties. We bought a nice 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood about 4 years ago. Nothing fancy, but it had a backyard, good schools nearby for when we had kids, and a 2-car garage. Not huge, but it was ours. We picked out paint colors together, argued about furniture placement, hosted our first Thanksgiving there. All the things young married couples do. My parents live about 20 minutes away in the house I grew up in. Same split-level ranch they bought when I was 2 years old. They're both retired now. Dad used to manage a hardware store, and Mom was a school secretary for 30 years. Good people, solid middle-class background. They worked hard, saved money, did everything right, or at least I thought they were good people. Thought they did everything right. They had this tradition of Sunday dinners that they took really seriously. Every single week, the whole family was supposed to show up at 5 o'clock sharp. Mom would make pot roast or lasagna or her famous fried chicken. We'd sit around that big oak dining table they'd bought at an estate sale back in the 80s, and we'd eat and talk and pretend we were this functional, happy family. It was their thing, you know, keeping the family together no matter what. Derek never really settled down. He bounced between jobs like they were trampolines. Started as a bank teller. Got fired for being late too many times. Tried selling insurance. Hated it. Quit after 4 months. Went back to school for graphic design, dropped out halfway through, worked at a gym for a while, then a call center, then did some freelance web development that never really took off. Always had some new scheme or business idea that was definitely going to make him rich this time. Never quite worked out. But he's charming though, I'll give him that. Always knew how to talk his way into things. Talk his way out of trouble. Could convince you black was white if he tried hard enough. Our parents would bail him out when he got in financial trouble, which happened more often than I'd like to admit. Rent money here, car payment there, just a little loan to get this business off the ground. I never said anything because, well, that's what family does, right? You help each other out. You don't keep score. The problem started about 2 years ago, but I didn't see them coming. How could I? You don't see a freight train coming when you're looking the other way. Madison started working even longer hours. There were more business trips to conferences in other cities, more late-night calls she had to take in another room, more weekend work sessions at coffee shops. I figured it was just her job getting more demanding. The startup was growing fast, bringing on new clients, expanding into new markets. She was up for a promotion to senior marketing director. Made sense that she'd be stressed, busy, distracted. Derek started coming around our place more often too. He'd drop by when I was at work, saying he was in the neighborhood and wanted to say hi to Madison. Just being friendly, being a good brother-in-law. She told me he was helping her with some tech stuff for work since he'd done some coding in the past, helping her optimize their website or something. I thought it was great that they were getting along so well. Family harmony, right? Looking back now, there were so many red flags I ignored. The way Madison's phone was suddenly always face down on the table. How she started going to the gym at weird hours, like 10 o'clock at night. The new lingerie I found in her drawer that she never wore around me still had the tags on. Derek canceling plans with me last minute, but posting Instagram stories from coffee shops near our house. Madison smelling different when she came home from her late work sessions, wearing perfume she usually saved for special occasions. But you know how it is when you trust someone completely. You don't want to see what's right in front of you. You make excuses. You tell yourself you're being paranoid, that you've been watching too many true crime documentaries, that not everyone who works late is cheating. The truth came out 6 months ago in the most cliché way possible. I came home early from a work site because we finished the structural assessment ahead of schedule. Found Derek's beat-up Honda Civic in our driveway, which was weird because he'd told me earlier that day he had a job interview across town. Found the front door unlocked. Found their clothes making a trail up the stairs. Found them in our bedroom. Our bedroom. The one I'd spent 3 weekends painting that specific shade of blue-gray Madison had obsessed over from Pinterest. I don't remember much about those first few minutes. There was shouting, a lot of shouting. Madison crying, grabbing for the sheets. Derek trying to pull his pants on and explain at the same time. Something about how it just happened, how they didn't mean for it to go this far, how they'd been fighting their feelings for months. All the usual garbage people say when they get caught doing something unforgivable. I kicked them both out, told Derek to get the hell out of my house and my life, told Madison I wanted a divorce, that I'd have her stuff packed up by the end of the week, that she could stay at a hotel, or with her mother, or with Derek for all I cared. She tried to convince me to calm down, to talk it through, to go to couples therapy, to work it out. Like there was anything to work out after I found her in bed with my own brother. That night, after I'd stopped shaking, after I'd thrown away the sheets and the pillows, after I'd taken a shower so hot it left marks on my skin, I called my parents. Needed someone to talk to, you know? Someone who would be on my side. Someone who would tell me I wasn't crazy for being devastated. I drove over to their house around 9 o'clock. Dad answered the door in his ratty old bathrobe, the one Mom keeps threatening to throw away. They sat me down in the living room, made me tea I didn't drink, and I told them everything, every detail. The clothes on the stairs, the excuses, Derek's face when I walked in. And you know what they said? We need to hear Derek's side of the story. That should have been my first warning sign. But I was in shock, so I didn't really process it. My brain was still stuck on the image of my wife and my brother together. I figured they were just trying to understand the whole situation before reacting. Parents do that, right? Try to get all the facts? Stay calm in a crisis? The next day, Derek apparently went over there too. Spent 2 hours giving them his version, which I'm sure was full of excuses and manipulation and twisted logic. My parents called me after and said they needed some time to process everything. Asked me not to do anything rash. To think carefully before making any big decisions. Too late for that. I'd already called a lawyer that morning. Martin, a guy I'd worked with on some municipal projects who did family law. He'd taken one look at my face and cleared his schedule. Filed for divorce that afternoon. Started separating our finances, changing passwords, documenting everything. Madison had been the one pushing to keep everything joint, said it showed trust and partnership. Yeah, I bet she liked having access to my accounts while planning her exit strategy. The divorce was messy, really messy. Madison wanted the house, wanted half my retirement savings, wanted alimony even though she made almost as much as I did. Claimed she'd sacrificed her career advancement to support my work, which was complete garbage. But her lawyer was good at spinning stories. My lawyer was better, though. We had a prenup, thank God. Something my dad had actually insisted on, ironically. Said it was just smart business, even though he liked Madison at the time. Guess he was right about that one thing. Here's where my parents really started showing their true colors. About a month after everything imploded, after I'd moved out of the house into a depressing one-bedroom apartment across town, after I'd started sleeping more than 3 hours a night again, I got invited to Sunday dinner like normal. Just a text from Mom. Dinner at 5. See you then. Love you. Figured it might be good to get out of my apartment, the place that smelled like old takeout and defeat. Maybe talk to my parents about everything that was happening with the lawyers. Have some home-cooked food instead of another frozen pizza. Feel normal for a few hours. I showed up at their place at 5 sharp, walked in through the back door like I'd done 1,000 times before, and guess who was sitting at the dining table? Madison and Derek. Together. Sitting next to each other. Laughing about something with my mom in the kitchen, like they were all old friends catching up. I just stood there in the doorway, completely frozen. Couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't process what I was seeing. My dad came over, put his hand on my shoulder in that fatherly way he used to do when I was upset about something, and said, "We don't take sides in our family. Everyone deserves a place at our table." I looked at him, really looked at him. Saw my dad, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who came to all my baseball games, who helped me move into my first apartment, and I didn't recognize him. Are you serious right now? Derek is our son too, Mom said, coming out of the kitchen with her floral oven mitts still on. And Madison was part of this family for 6 years. We can't just cut people out. That's not what family does. They were sleeping together, I said, my voice sounding weird and distant. In my house, in my bed, for months. Dad sighed like I was being difficult about something minor. We understand you're hurt, but Derek explained that you and Madison had been growing apart for a while. That you were distant, focused on work. These things happen. People make mistakes. We need to move forward as a family, growing apart. That's what Derek told them. Not that he'd been systematically betraying his own brother for who knows how long. Not that Madison had been lying to my face while planning a future with someone else. Just that we'd been growing apart, and these things happen. Madison had the audacity to give me this sad smile, this pitying look. I'm glad we can all be mature about this. I think it's important that we stay civil. I left. Didn't eat, didn't sit down, didn't say another word. Just walked right back out that door and got in my car and drove. Ended up at a bar I'd never been to on the other side of town. Got about 50 texts that night from my mom saying I was being childish and that I needed to learn forgiveness. That holding grudges would only hurt me. That Derek was sorry and Madison was sorry. And everyone deserved a second chance. The Sunday dinners continued. Every single week, Derek and Madison would be there. Sitting at that table, eating my mom's cooking, probably talking about how unreasonable I was being. My parents would invite me, and every week I'd decline. They started getting annoyed with me. Said I was holding a grudge, that I was being petty, that family is supposed to forgive each other no matter what. My brother, who betrayed me in the worst way possible. My ex-wife, who cheated on me for months. And my parents expected me to just sit at a table and pass them the mashed potatoes, like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't walked in on them destroying my entire life. Here's something I haven't mentioned yet. Something that becomes important later. About 5 years ago, my parents almost lost their house. Dad had made some bad investments, trying to play the stock market with some buddies from the hardware store. Lost about $40,000 in some tech startup that went belly up. They got behind on their mortgage. Like really behind. We're talking foreclosure notices, lawyers calling, the whole nightmare scenario. I helped them. Used a big chunk of my savings, about $30,000, to catch up their payments and get them out of default. Then, to make sure they'd never be in that position again, I refinanced their mortgage in my name. Better credit score, better interest rate, the works. Cut their monthly payment by almost $400. They made the monthly payments to me, and I paid the bank. It was supposed to protect them, help them retire comfortably. The house is in their name, but the mortgage is in mine. Legally, I'm responsible for it. If they don't pay, it hits my credit. If they default, I'm on the hook. For 5 years, they never missed a payment. Things were good. They thanked me every month when they handed over the check, said I was such a good son, so responsible, that they didn't know what they'd do without me. I never thought twice about it. They were my parents. You help your parents. But after 3 months of Sunday dinners with Derek and Madison, after 3 months of my parents telling me I needed to get over it, after 3 months of being told I was the problem for not wanting to play happy family with the two people who destroyed my marriage, something in me shifted. I was sitting in my apartment one Sunday, the same time the family dinner would be happening. I could picture it perfectly. Mom bringing out the pot roast, Dad carving it at the head of the table, Derek and Madison sitting there, probably holding hands under the table, probably relieved that I wasn't there to ruin the mood with my negativity. And I thought, if they don't take sides, then neither do I. I pulled up my bank account on my laptop, looked at that mortgage payment that came out like clockwork on the first of every month, $1,200, had been paying it for 5 years without fail. I drafted an email, read it over 3 times, made sure it was professional and clear. Dear Mom and Dad, due to recent changes in my financial situation, I will no longer be able to cover the mortgage payments on your property. Your first payment will be due on the 1st of next month. The amount is $1,247.83. Please make arrangements accordingly. I've attached the mortgage company's contact information and account number for your reference. I stared at that email for about 20 minutes before I hit send. My finger hovered over the button. This was it. This was the nuclear option. Once I sent this, there was no taking it back. I hit send. My phone started ringing within 5 minutes. Mom's name on the screen. I didn't answer. Let it go to voicemail. Her voice was panicked, shaking. What are you talking about? What financial changes? This doesn't make any sense. Call us back right now. We need to talk about this. I didn't call back. Instead, I sent a follow-up email with copies of the original loan documents showing they were the homeowners, the mortgage statement, and the bank's contact information. Everything they needed to set up their own payment plan. They had 25 days to make arrangements. The calls kept coming. 23 missed calls that first night. Dad left a voicemail saying this was unacceptable, that we had an agreement, that I couldn't just change the terms like this. Another from Mom crying, asking how I could do this to them. How could I be so cruel? Derek even called, telling me I was being manipulative and using money to punish people, that I was showing my true colors. That last one made me laugh. Derek calling me manipulative. Derek, who'd been sleeping with my wife while pretending to be my brother. The irony was almost funny. I finally answered on day 3. My mom was crying before she even said hello. How could you do this to us? This is our home. We've lived here for 32 years. You're right, I said calmly, surprised by how steady my voice was. It is your home, and you should be the ones paying for it. We can't afford these payments. You know that. That's why you took over the mortgage in the first place. Then you should probably cut back on some expenses. Maybe stop buying dinner for 6 people every Sunday. That's gotta add up. Pot roast isn't cheap. Silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing. This is about Derek and Madison, isn't it? Dad had gotten on the line, voice tight with anger. This is about me not subsidizing people who don't respect me. You said you don't take sides. Great. I don't take sides either. Which means I'm not taking your side when it comes to paying your bills. That's completely different. Is it? Because it seems pretty similar to me. You made a choice to keep hosting them, to keep welcoming them into your home, to keep telling me I'm wrong for being hurt, to tell me I'm being petty and immature for not wanting to sit across from the people who betrayed me. Those were your choices. This is mine. Mom started crying harder. You're going to make us lose our house. We'll be out on the street. No, you're going to lose your house if you don't figure out how to make the payments. I'm just not going to prevent it anymore. There's a difference. We're your parents. We raised you. We put a roof over your head. And Derek is your son. And Madison was your daughter-in-law for 6 years. Apparently, those relationships are sacred and worth protecting no matter what they do. So I'm sure your relationship with Derek is worth him helping out with the mortgage, right? He can chip in. He's been living rent-free with his new girlfriend, Madison, so he should have some money saved up. I could hear them both trying to talk over each other, voices rising, but I just hung up. The next Sunday, I didn't get an invitation to dinner. In fact, I didn't hear from my parents at all for 4 days. When my mom finally called, her voice was cold, professional almost. Derek says he can't help with the house payments. He's been struggling financially, between jobs again. That's unfortunate. Madison said you got the house in the divorce, so she can't help either. All her money is tied up in legal fees. Sounds like you're in a tough spot then. How can you be so cruel? We raised you. We gave you everything. We sacrificed for you. You gave me everything equally with Derek, remember? You always made sure of that. Same college fund, same birthday presents, same everything. So I'm sure he'll step up equally now. That's only fair, right? She hung up on me. 2 weeks before their payment was due, my dad called. No mom in the background, no crying, just him. And he sounded tired. What's it going to take? He asked quietly. What do you mean? For you to keep paying the mortgage. What do you want? Money? An apology? What? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I want you to choose. Choose what? Derek and Madison, or me. You don't get both. You said you don't take sides, but Dad, you did take a side. You took their side the moment you invited them to your house and expected me to be okay with it. The moment you told me to get over it. The moment you said Derek's excuses were good enough. He's my son. So am I. But you decided his comfort was more important than my pain. You decided having them at your table was more important than having me. So now you get to decide if their company is worth your house. Long silence. I could hear him breathing, hear the TV in the background. That's not fair. Neither was walking into my parents' house and seeing my ex-wife and my brother laughing together like they didn't blow up my entire life. But you know what? Life isn't fair, Dad. You taught me that. Remember? When I didn't make varsity baseball sophomore year, and you said life isn't fair, you just have to work harder? When I didn't get the scholarship I wanted, and you said sometimes things don't work out the way we plan? This is different. Yeah, it is. Because I'm not asking you to work harder. I'm asking you to make a choice. The same choice you've been asking me to accept for months. You chose to stay neutral, which meant choosing them. Now choose if they're worth $1,200 a month. He hung up. The payment was due in 10 days when Derek showed up at my apartment. I'd just gotten home from work, still had my work boots on, when I found him leaning against his car in the parking lot. Arms crossed, trying to look tough. We need to talk, he said. No, we don't. Mom and Dad are going to lose the house because of you. Their house. Where we grew up. Where they've lived for over 30 years. No, they're going to lose the house because they can't afford it. And they decided that maintaining a relationship with the guy who slept with my wife was more important than maintaining one with the guy who's been paying their mortgage for 5 years. Derek's face flushed red. It wasn't like that with Madison and me. You don't understand. It just happened. We didn't plan it. Things don't just happen, Derek. You made choices. Every time you came to my house. Every time you texted her. Every time you sat next to her at Sunday dinner and smiled at me like everything was normal. Every time you lied to my face. Those were choices. You chose to do that. I'm your brother. We're supposed to forgive each other. You were my brother. Now you're just some guy who screwed my wife and expected me to get over it because we share DNA. Look, I get that you're mad, but taking it out on Mom and Dad isn't right. They didn't do anything wrong. They're just trying to keep the family together. I actually laughed at that. They did everything wrong, Derek. They told me to forgive you when you didn't even apologize. They invited you and Madison to family dinners while I was going through a divorce. They told me I was being petty for not wanting to break bread with the people who betrayed me. They chose you, over and over again. So now they get to live with that choice. I can't help them with the house. I don't have that kind of money. I'm barely making rent. Then I guess you're not as valuable to them as they thought you were. Funny how that works. He got angry then. Started yelling about how I was being vindictive, how I was destroying the family, how Mom was having panic attacks because of me, how this was all my fault for not being able to let things go. I just went inside and locked the door. Stood there listening to him yell for about 5 minutes before he finally left. 3 days before the payment was due, both my parents showed up at my apartment. Together this time. They looked like they'd aged 10 years in the last month. I let them in because, honestly, I wanted to hear what they had to say. They sat on my second-hand couch, looking smaller than I remembered. Older. Tired. We'll tell Derek and Madison they can't come to Sunday dinners anymore, Mom said quietly, not meeting my eyes. If that's what you want, if that's what it takes, it's not about what I want anymore, Mom. It's about what you chose. You chose to make them feel welcome, and me feel crazy for being hurt. You chose to prioritize their feelings over mine. We were trying to keep the family together, Dad said, and he actually sounded like he believed it. No, you were trying to avoid conflict with Derek. There's a difference. You've been avoiding conflict with Derek his whole life. Every time he screwed up, you fixed it. Every time he needed money, you gave it to him. Every time he disappointed you, you lowered your expectations instead of raising your standards. And when he screwed me over in the worst way possible, you decided that was just another thing to overlook. We love both our sons, Mom whispered. Then you should have acted like it. You should have told Derek what he did was unforgivable. You should have supported me, not asked me to get over it. You should have chosen the son who was loyal over the son who wasn't. What do you want us to do? Dad asked, and he sounded genuinely confused. Tell us. We'll do it. Just tell us what you want. That's when I realized they still didn't get it. They thought this was a negotiation, that they could say the right words and everything would go back to normal, and I'd go back to paying their bills and pretending nothing happened. I want you to understand that choices have consequences. You chose Derek and Madison over me. You chose their comfort over my pain. Now you get to live with that choice. If Derek is worth more to you than me, then he should be worth enough to help you keep your house. But he can't. Then maybe you chose wrong. Maybe you bet on the wrong son. Maybe you should have thought about that before you told me I needed to forgive the people who destroyed my marriage. They left. The payment came due. They didn't make it. I didn't either. That's when things got really interesting. The mortgage company called me 3 days after the missed payment. Since my name was on the loan, I was the first point of contact. I explained the situation as calmly as I could. The homeowners would be making payments going forward. I was no longer involved in the financial arrangement. They weren't happy about it. Started talking about late fees and credit impacts. But I'd been a good customer for 5 years. Perfect payment history. So they said they'd give my parents some time to work it out. I called my parents, gave them the mortgage company's direct line and the account representative's name, and told them they needed to work it out. Then I blocked their numbers for a week. Needed some space from all of it. Some silence. When I unblocked them, I had 27 missed calls and about 40 texts. Most from Mom, increasingly desperate. Some from Dad, angry and then pleading. 3 from Derek calling me every name in the book. Even one from Madison saying I was being cruel and vindictive. I listened to the voicemails in order. It was like hearing them go through the 5 stages of grief in real time. First, anger. How dare I do this to them? I was ungrateful. They'd raised me better than this. I was showing my true colors. They'd always known I was cold. Then, bargaining. They'd make it right. They'd talk to Derek, set boundaries. Madison wouldn't be welcome anymore. They'd do whatever I wanted. Then, depression. They were going to lose everything. How could I let this happen? They'd be homeless. They'd have nowhere to go. Finally, acceptance. They'd figured out a solution. That last message was from Dad, and his voice was flat, empty. We've worked something out with the bank. We're selling the house. Listing it this week. I sat in my car in my apartment parking lot, listening to that message 3 times. Selling the house. The house I grew up in. The house where every Sunday dinner happened. The house where I'd learned to ride a bike in the driveway and had my high school graduation party in the backyard. The house that apparently meant so much to them that they were willing to blow up their relationship with me to keep filling it with Derek and Madison. I called Dad back. You're selling? We don't have a choice. We can't afford the payments, and we're already behind. The bank is willing to work with us if we list it immediately. Real estate agent comes tomorrow. Where will you go? There's a condo complex near the lake. 2 bedrooms. Smaller, but manageable. The mortgage will be half what it is now, maybe less. We can afford it on retirement alone. Won't need anyone's help. That last part stung. Won't need anyone's help. Won't need my help. Good. Silence on his end. Long enough that I thought he'd hung up. Then, are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? No, Dad. I'm not happy. I didn't want any of this. I wanted my wife not to cheat on me. I wanted my brother not to betray me. I wanted my parents to support me. But you couldn't just do that. You couldn't just tell Derek he was wrong. You had to stay neutral. And neutral meant choosing him. So no, I'm not happy. But I'm done being the only one who has to sacrifice. We never chose him over you. Yeah, you did. Every single Sunday you chose him. Every time you told me to forgive him, you chose him. Every time you made excuses for what he did, you chose him. Every time you told me I was being unreasonable, you chose him. I was just supposed to accept that. Well, now you get to accept this. Mom got on the line. Her voice was hollow, defeated. Derek hasn't spoken to us in 2 weeks. That surprised me. What? After we told him we couldn't afford the house and asked if he could help, even just a little bit, he stopped taking our calls. Madison, too. We haven't seen either of them. They're not answering texts. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt sad for them. We chose wrong, she said quietly, and I could hear her crying. You were right. We chose wrong. It didn't feel as good as I thought it would, hearing her admit it. The house closes in 30 days, Dad said, back on the line. We're doing an estate sale next weekend. If there's anything you want from your childhood room, you should come get it. I went to the estate sale. Couldn't not go, really. It was surreal, seeing all our family stuff laid out on tables with price tags attached. Mom's china that she'd inherited from her grandmother, the set she only used for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Dad's tool collection that he'd spent decades building, every wrench and screwdriver organized perfectly. The dining room table where all those Sunday dinners happened, where Derek and Madison had sat and laughed while I was falling apart. Some stranger was going to eat dinner at that table now. Some other family would make memories there. The thought made me sad in a way I didn't expect. My parents were in the garage, sorting through old holiday decorations when I found them. Mom was wrapping ornaments in newspaper, moving slowly like everything hurt. "Hey," I said. "Hey," Dad replied. Mom didn't look up, just kept wrapping. "I'm sorry it came to this," I said. And I meant it. I really did. I hadn't wanted them to lose the house. I just wanted them to see what their neutrality had cost. What choosing Derek had cost. "Are we going to be okay?" Mom asked, finally looking at me. Her eyes were red. "You and us. Can we fix this?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "You hurt me. Really badly, and I know I hurt you too. Maybe we can fix it eventually, but I'm not ready yet. I need time." Dad nodded slowly. "That's fair. That's more than fair." "For what it's worth," Mom said, carefully setting down an ornament. "We haven't talked to Derek since we asked him for help with the house. He said we were being manipulative, that we were using our financial problems to guilt him. Said he had his own life to worry about." The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Derek, who they'd chosen over me, had abandoned them the second they needed something from him. "I'm not asking you to cut him out," I said. "I don't want you to have to choose anymore. But I need you to understand that I can't be around him, or Madison. If you want a relationship with me going forward, it has to be separate from whatever relationship you have with them." "He's our son," Dad said, but there was less conviction in it than before. "So am I." They sold the house 3 weeks later. Some young family with 2 kids bought it. Said they loved the backyard, loved the neighborhood, probably going to paint over the blue-gray bedroom and make it a nursery. My parents moved into a 2-bedroom condo near the lake. It's nice, actually. Modern, updated appliances, easier to maintain. Lake view from the balcony. They seem smaller there, though. Like the reduced square footage made them physically shrink. They stopped doing Sunday dinners. Said it didn't feel right without the big dining room, without the oak table. I think the truth is it didn't feel right knowing Derek and Madison wouldn't come anyway. Knowing that their neutrality had cost them everything. We do coffee sometimes. Every other week or so. Neutral ground, a cafe halfway between my place and their condo. We talk about safe things. My work, their retirement activities, the weather, shows we're watching on Netflix. Never about Derek, never about what happened. Mom asked me about dating last week. Said she worried I'd be alone forever because of what Madison did. I told her I'd been on a few dates but nothing serious. That I was taking my time, being careful. She didn't push, didn't offer to set me up with anyone. Progress, I guess. Derek sent me an email about a month ago. Long, rambling, full of apologies and explanations. Said he and Madison broke up. Shocker. Turns out relationships built on betrayal don't have strong foundations. Who knew? He's working at a car dealership now. Selling used cars. Making decent money, he says. He asked if we could talk. Maybe get coffee. Start over. I haven't responded. Don't know if I will. Some things can't be fixed with words and coffee. The divorce finalized 3 months ago. I got the house, kept most of my savings. Madison got some of the furniture and her car. She tried to add me on LinkedIn last week, probably job searching and trying to expand her network. I declined. My parents paid me back for the missed mortgage payment. Sent me a check with "we're sorry" written in the memo line. I deposited it but didn't cash it for a week. Not sure why. Maybe I wasn't ready to close that chapter yet. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Story 3. This story is titled, "I Bought a House for Myself. Not for my sister who sided with my cheating ex. Now my parents are furious. But I got my ultimate revenge." Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey guys, I'm 34, male, and I never thought I'd be posting on Reddit about this crap. But here we are. I used to have what I thought was a pretty decent life. Decent job as a mechanic at a local garage, a rented house in an okay neighborhood, and a wife, I'll call her Jessica, that I'd been with since college. Nothing fancy, but it was stable, you know? I worked hard, paid the bills on time, and thought I was building something that would last. Jessica and I weren't perfect, but whose relationship is? We had our routines, our inside jokes, our plans for the future. Or at least I thought we did. 2 years ago, my life basically exploded when I walked in on my wife Jessica screwing our neighbor in our bed. Not even making this up. I came home early from work because I wanted to surprise her for our anniversary. Guess the surprise was on me. I still remember the look on her face when she saw me standing in the doorway. Not even embarrassment, just annoyance that I'd interrupted. That's when I knew our 6-year marriage was actually dead long before I opened that bedroom door. The next few weeks were a blur of arguments, fake apologies, and me sleeping on my buddy Mike's couch while trying not to completely lose my mind. Jessica kept saying it was just a mistake and how we could work through this, but then I found texts going back months. This wasn't a one-time thing. She'd been cheating pretty much our entire marriage. The divorce was nasty as hell. She tried to take everything, including the car I'd bought before we even met. Her lawyer was this shark in a suit who kept looking at me like I was dirt. Meanwhile, I could barely afford my lawyer, who honestly seemed more interested in his lunch break than my case. But the worst betrayal wasn't even from Jessica. It was from my sister Amber, 29 female. We'd always been close, or so I thought. Single mom, 2 kids. I'd always helped her out when times were tough. Bought school supplies for my niece and nephew, fixed her car countless times, even paid her rent twice when she was between jobs. And how did she repay me? By completely siding with Jessica. Not because she thought I deserved to be cheated on, but because Jessica was buying her stuff. New clothes, taking her out to fancy restaurants, even babysitting so Amber could go on dates. And the cherry on top? Jessica promised to hook her up with this supposed rich friend of the guy she was cheating with. Amber was literally trading her loyalty for the chance at a sugar daddy. You probably drove her to cheat anyway, Amber told me over the phone when I called her, hurt that she was still hanging out with Jessica. Men never understand what women need. That was the moment I realized I was truly on my own. I hung up, blocked her number, and made a decision right then. I was going to rebuild my life if it killed me. So I packed up the few things Jessica's lawyer let me keep and found the cheapest apartment I could. It was basically a shoebox with a bathroom attached. The kind of place where you can cook dinner, watch TV, and use the toilet without getting up from your bed. Yeah, that's small. I remember sitting on that lumpy mattress the first night, wondering how the hell my life had collapsed so fast. Like 6 months before, I was married, had a decent place to live, thought my sister had my back, and was actually pretty happy. Now, I was in a crappy apartment that smelled like the previous tenant's cats. My wife was screwing half the neighborhood, and my sister was Team Jessica all the way. The worst part was seeing their Instagram posts. Jessica and Amber were suddenly BFFs, posting selfies at restaurants I could never afford to take Jessica to, with these long captions about living your best life and toxic people, meaning me, obviously. One time they even posted from a weekend trip to the beach that Jessica and I had always talked about taking, but never had the money for. Guess she found the money once I wasn't in the picture. My parents weren't much help either. They kept telling me to try to work things out with Jessica, because marriage is about compromise. When I told them about catching her literally in bed with another dude, my mom said, "Well, relationships are complicated, honey." Yeah, no kidding, Mom. I think that's what hurt the most. Everyone acting like I was overreacting by being upset that my wife was cheating. Like I was the unreasonable one for not wanting to stay with someone who had been lying to my face for years. The breaking point came when I ran into Amber at the grocery store, about a month after moving into my shoebox apartment. I was buying ramen and cheap coffee, basically my entire diet at that point, and she was loading up on expensive snacks, the kind of stuff she could never afford before. I tried to avoid her, but she spotted me and came over with this fake concerned look. "Oh my God, you look terrible," she said, eyeing my cart. "Are you eating enough?" Before I could answer, she launched into this story about how Jessica was doing so much better now, and how her new boyfriend, the neighbor she'd been cheating with, was so generous, and took them all out to this fancy restaurant last weekend. "You know," she said, leaning in like she was sharing some big secret, "Jessica told me everything about why your marriage failed. You really should have paid more attention to her needs." I just stared at her, not even knowing how to respond to that. My sister, who I'd helped raise after our dad left when she was 12, was standing in front of me basically saying I deserved to be cheated on. "Jessica's new boyfriend might have a friend you'd like," she added with a smirk. "Someone who can afford better groceries than this." She gestured at my cart. I left my groceries right there in the aisle and walked out. Didn't say a word to her. Just turned around and left. That night, I made a plan. I was done feeling sorry for myself. Done letting Jessica and Amber make me feel like I was the problem. I was going to rebuild my life from scratch, and I was going to do it so well that they'd choke on their words. My goal was to work my ass off until I could afford a place of my own. A real place, not a depressing shoebox. Something that was mine that no one could take away from me revenge would taste in the end. So my routine went insane and probably not healthy, but I didn't care. I'd wake up at 5 a.m., hit the crappy gym in my apartment building, basically just a treadmill and some dumbbells in a closet, then get to the garage by 6:30. I'd work until 6 or 7 p.m., sometimes later if we had emergency repairs. Then I'd grab some cheap takeout, go home, and study until my eyes couldn't stay open anymore. Weekends weren't any better. I picked up side jobs fixing cars for cash, changed oil, replaced brake pads, swapped out alternators, basic stuff I could do in parking lots with minimal tools. It wasn't exactly legal, but it paid, and I needed every dollar. The manager, I'll call him Rick, started giving me more responsibilities at the shop. First, it was just ordering parts and talking to customers. Then he let me handle the scheduling and some of the hiring. By month 6, I was basically running the place while he supervised, aka played solitaire in the back office. You know, he told me one day while we were locking up, I've owned this place for almost 30 years. Never had someone work as hard as you do. What's driving you, kid? I thought about telling him the whole sad story. The cheating wife, the backstabbing sister, the whole mess. But instead I just said, trying to buy a house. He nodded like that made perfect sense. Good goal. Nothing better than having your own place. No landlord to answer to. No worrying about rent going up. Smart move. That simple validation meant more to me than he probably realized. In a world where everyone seemed to think I was the bad guy for being upset about being cheated on, having someone just say good job was huge. The funny thing is, even though I was working nonstop, I started feeling better. Like the constant activity kept me from sitting around feeling sorry for myself, and seeing actual progress in my bank account every month gave me something to focus on, besides how much my life sucked. Don't get me wrong, I still had plenty of bad days. Days when I'd see a post from Jessica or Amber and have to resist the urge to throw my phone against the wall. Days when a customer would come in who reminded me of Jessica, and I get flashbacks of her cheating. But those days got fewer and farther between as time passed. The online classes were kicking my ass, though. I hadn't been a great student in high school, and trying to learn accounting principles after a 12-hour shift fixing cars was brutal. I failed the first practice exam so bad that my online tutor actually called me to ask if I was okay. But I kept at it, studying during lunch breaks, watching tutorial videos while waiting for parts deliveries, drilling myself with flashcards before bed. Slowly, painfully, I started to get it. And the more I understood, the more I could see how Rick's business could be improved. He was still doing everything old school, paper invoices, no real inventory system, pricing based on gut feeling rather than actual costs. One night, after closing, I showed him a spreadsheet I'd made analyzing the last 6 months of jobs. I'd broken down which services made the most profit, which customers were repeat business, which suppliers gave us the best deals. It was basic stuff I'd learned in my classes, but Rick looked at me like I'd just performed magic. "Where did you learn to do all this?" he asked, scrolling through my analysis. "Online classes," I said. "Been taking them at night." He gave me this long look, then said something that changed everything. "You know, I've been thinking about selling this place when I retire. Always figured I'd just close up shop, but you interested in buying me out someday?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Own the garage? Actually be my own boss? It seemed impossible. "I don't have that kind of money, Rick." He waved his hand dismissively. "We could work something out. Payment plan, you taking over more and more while I phase out. I'd rather sell to someone who gives a damn than some corporation that'll fire everyone and jack up prices." It was the first time in ages that I felt like maybe things might work out. Not just getting by, but actually building something, having a future that I controlled. That night, I went home and added another goal to my list. Not just buy a house, but buy the garage too. It would take longer, require even more work, but the thought of owning my own business, being completely independent, was too good to pass up. About a year into my non-stop grind, things at the shop were going great. Rick had basically made me the manager, and our business was up 30% since I'd started running things. I was saving every penny that didn't go to rent or food. My social life was non-existent, but I didn't care. I had a plan. Then I started hearing whispers that things weren't so perfect in Jessica and Amberland. The guy Jessica had been cheating with? Yeah, he'd moved on to someone else barely 2 months after our divorce was final. Apparently, he wasn't interested in anything serious. And that rich sugar daddy Jessica had promised to introduce Amber to turned out he was just some broke dude pretending to be rich to get into clubs. When Amber finally met him, he tried to get her to pay for dinner. The shopping trips slowed down. The fancy vacations stopped. Jessica had blown through most of her divorce money, trying to impress her new boyfriend, who'd now ditched her. And Amber, who'd quit her steady job at the insurance office thinking she was about to land a rich guy, was struggling to find work again. I heard all this through Mike, who was still friends with Jessica's cousin. I didn't say anything when he told me. Didn't laugh or say, "I told you so." Just nodded and kept working on the transmission I was fixing. But inside, I'm not gonna lie, it felt good to know karma was finally showing up. Rick noticed how much effort I was putting in and offered me a deal I never expected. He wanted to start the process of me buying him out of the business. "You're running it anyway," he said. "Might as well own it." We worked out a payment plan that would take years, but it was doable. Between that and my savings, I finally had enough for a down payment on a modest house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it would be mine. The day I signed the papers for the house, I immediately got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Amber. Somehow she'd gotten a new phone and wanted to reconnect. Said she missed her brother and how family should stick together. I didn't respond. I was too busy planning my move. Then one Saturday, I was at the shop late finishing up a complicated engine rebuild when Rick came in. He usually didn't work weekends, so I was surprised to see him. "Don't you ever take a day off?" he asked, shaking his head. I shrugged. Got nowhere else to be. He sat down on the stool next to my workbench. "Look, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. My wife and I are thinking about moving to Arizona. Her arthritis is getting worse, and the cold winters here aren't helping. Doctor says a warmer climate would be good for her." My heart sank. Was he selling the garage to someone else? After all my hard work? "So, what happens to the shop?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He looked at me like I was an idiot. "That's what I want to talk about. I'm ready to accelerate our plan. Instead of the 5-year buyout we discussed, I want to do it in 2. You take over as owner at the end of the year, we work out a payment schedule you can handle, and I head west for some sunshine." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was happening way faster than I'd expected. "I don't know if I have enough saved for that kind of down payment yet," I admitted. "I just put most of my savings toward the house." Rick waved his hand. "We'll figure it out. You've already increased business by 30%. The place is worth more with you running it anyway. Maybe we adjust the percentages a bit. You get a bigger cut of the profits now, but more of that goes toward your ownership stake." We spent the next hour working out the details. By the time he left, we had the outline of a deal that would make me the owner of Rick's auto repair by Christmas. It wasn't perfect. I'd be stretching myself financially for a couple of years. But it was doable. And the thought of owning my own business before I turned 35? That was worth the risk. As I was locking up the shop, my phone buzzed with another text from Amber. This one was less friendly than the first. "Seriously? You're just going to ignore me? After everything I've done for you?" "Real mature, bro." I snorted. Everything she'd done for me? Like trash-talking me to my ex-wife? Like mocking my pain while I was at my lowest point? Like choosing Jessica's empty promises over her own brother? I typed out about 5 different angry responses, deleted them all, and finally settled on, "Busy with work. Talk later." It was non-committal enough that she couldn't accuse me of ignoring her, but vague enough that later could mean basically never. I had no interest in letting Amber back into my life just because her meal ticket had disappeared. When I got home to my crappy apartment that night, I looked around at the packed boxes and cheap furniture and felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: pride. In just a few days, I'd be moving into my own house. In a few months, I'd own my own business, and I'd done it all by myself, while the people who were supposed to love me had been betting on my failure. And because nothing in this life is perfect, the next morning, I got a call from the real estate agent. The seller was trying to back out, claiming they got a better offer. My stomach dropped, but the agent reassured me the contract was airtight. It'd just delay closing by a couple of weeks while their lawyer set them straight. Annoying, but after the year I'd had, one more obstacle wasn't going to stop me. 3 days before I was set to move into my new place, there was a knock at my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and the few friends I had left knew I was busy packing. I opened the door to find Amber standing there, looking nothing like the confident woman who'd mocked me at the garage a year ago. Her hair was a mess, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had this desperate look on her face that I recognized. It was the same look she used to have before asking me for money. "Hey, stranger," she said, trying to sound casual. "Can I come in?" I didn't move from the doorway. "What do you want, Amber?" She forced a laugh. Can't a sister just visit her brother? It's been forever. Yeah, about a year. Since you came to the shop to brag about Jessica's diamond bracelet, I said, crossing my arms. Her fake smile dropped. Look, I made some mistakes, okay? I was stupid. Jessica fed me all these lies about you, and I believed her. I'm sorry. I laughed. Where is Jessica now? Still buying you stuff? Amber's eyes dropped to the floor. We're not really hanging out anymore. She's going through some stuff. That means Jessica wasn't useful to her anymore. I sighed. Again. What do you want, Amber? That's when she noticed the boxes behind me. Are you moving? Yep. Bought a house. Closing was last week. Her eyes lit up like I just offered her a winning lottery ticket. A house? That's amazing. How many bedrooms? And there it was. I could see the wheels turning in her head. 3, I said, knowing exactly where this was going. That's perfect, she exclaimed, way too enthusiastically. Because, well, I'm kind of in a situation. My landlord's selling the building, and we have to be out by the end of the month. The kids and I have been looking, but you know how crazy rent is these days. I just stared at her, waiting for her to get to the point. So I was thinking, she continued, maybe we could help each other out. The kids and I could move in with you. We wouldn't be any trouble. I could help with bills once I find a new job, and the kids would love having their uncle around. The audacity was actually impressive. After everything, the betrayal, the mockery, the complete dismissal of my pain, she really thought she could just show up and get a free place to live. No, I said simply. Her smile faltered. What do you mean no? I mean no, you can't live with me. Not now, not ever. She switched tactics immediately, her eyes welling up with tears. But the kids, they have nowhere to go. We might end up in a shelter. Is that what you want? Your own niece and nephew homeless because you're too selfish to help? That's when I lost it. Not by yelling or slamming the door, but by laughing. I couldn't help it. The sheer manipulation was so transparent. Where were you when Jessica was screwing around behind my back? I asked. Where were you when I was sleeping on Mike's couch? When I lost my house, my savings, my marriage? Oh, right. You were shopping with the woman who destroyed my life, laughing about what a loser I was. Her face went pale. That's not... I didn't mean... I started to close the door, but she stuck her foot in the way. Please, she begged, real desperation in her voice now. I have nowhere else to go. Mom and Dad won't help. Jessica's ghosting me and my friends. They can't take us in. That sounds like a you problem, I said, echoing the exact words she'd said to me when I told her Jessica had taken most of our joint account before I could freeze it. I moved her foot and closed the door. For about 5 minutes, she stood out there knocking and calling my name. I ignored her completely, going back to packing boxes like she wasn't even there. Eventually, she gave up and left. I thought that would be the end of it. I should have known better. The next day, my phone started blowing up with texts and calls, not just from Amber, but from my parents too. Apparently, Amber had gone straight to them with some sob story about how I was refusing to help her and the kids in their time of need. My mom's voicemail was classic guilt trip material. I raised you better than this. Family helps family. I can't believe you would let your sister and those poor children suffer when you have a whole house to yourself. Never mind that my parents had barely reached out during my divorce. Never mind that they'd suggested I try to work things out with Jessica, even after I told them about the cheating. Never mind that they'd done absolutely nothing to help me when I was the one in crisis. My dad's message was worse. Son, I'm disappointed in you. A man takes care of his family. Your sister needs help, and you're in a position to provide it. That's your responsibility as her brother. I hadn't heard from my dad in months, and this was what finally got him to call? Telling me I wasn't being man enough because I wouldn't let my backstabbing sister move into the house I'd worked my ass off to buy? I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on finishing my packing and coordinating with the moving company. I had taken the day off from the garage specifically to get everything ready for the move, and I wasn't going to waste it dealing with family drama. Then came the text that really set me off. It was from Jessica. Yeah, my ex-wife, the woman who'd cheated on me for most of our marriage, thought she had the right to weigh in. I know we're not on the best terms, but I'm really worried about Amber and the kids. She says you bought a house with plenty of room but won't help them. That doesn't sound like the man I married. Please reconsider. The hypocrisy was so stunning I had to read it twice. I finally broke my silence with a single reply. The man you married no longer exists. You killed him. Do not contact me again. Then I blocked her number. By that evening, the messages from my family had taken on a more threatening tone. My mom was now saying she was going to have to get involved if I didn't do the right thing. My dad mentioned something about coming over to talk some sense into me. Amber had switched from begging to angry accusations about how I was showing my true colors and always was the selfish one. I didn't care anymore. Let them come, let them threaten. I was done being the family doormat. The next morning, I woke up to a new voice message from an unknown number. It was Jessica's mother, my former mother-in-law, telling me she was very disappointed in how I was treating Amber and that she had raised Jessica to believe family comes first. I nearly choked on my coffee. Yeah, Jessica really put family first when she was screwing the neighbor. I realized they were pulling out all the stops, contacting anyone they thought might have influence over me. It was pathetic and desperate, but also a little scary. How far were they willing to go? I decided to take some precautions. I called the real estate agent and asked if we could move up the closing date. Explained that I had some family issues and needed to get into the house as soon as possible. She said she'd try, but no promises. Then I called Rick and explained the situation. He was surprisingly understanding, even offering to let me crash at his place if things got too intense with my family. I also called Mike, who had been my rock through the divorce. He immediately offered to come over and help me finish packing, and to be there when I moved in case my family tried to show up and cause trouble. Dude, he said, they're only coming around now because you're doing well. Where were they when you were sleeping on my couch? Screw 'em. It felt good to have people in my corner, even if they weren't blood relatives. That afternoon, the real estate agent called with good news. We could close the next day. The seller had finally accepted that they couldn't back out, and all the paperwork was ready. I'd be able to move into my new house 48 hours earlier than planned. I didn't tell anyone in my family about the change in plans. Let them show up at my empty apartment. By then, I'd be safely in my new home, with a security system installed and no forwarding address left behind. Moving day came, and I left my crappy apartment behind for good. My new house wasn't anything special by most people's standards, but to me, it was everything. I spent that first night sitting on my back porch with a cold soda, looking up at the stars, feeling like I could finally breathe again. And I did something I probably shouldn't have. I posted a few photos of my new place on Facebook. Nothing flashy, just a simple new chapter, new home post. I knew Amber would see it. I knew my parents would see it. Part of me wanted them to. The reactions were immediate. Friends I hadn't talked to in ages congratulated me. Guys from the shop liked the post. A few people from high school commented about how well I was doing. And then the private messages started. My dad telling me how disappointed he was that I would flaunt my success while your sister struggles. My mom saying I was being needlessly cruel. And Amber? She went nuclear. She posted this long, dramatic rant on her page about how money changes people. She didn't tag me, but everyone knew who she was talking about. I didn't engage with their drama. I focused on the garage. Business was booming, and Rick was talking about retiring earlier than planned. We were working out the details of me taking over completely within the next year. For the first time since finding Jessica with that guy, I was actually happy. Not just surviving, but thriving. And I'd done it all on my own. But of course, they couldn't just let me be. 3 days after I moved in, my mom called from a new number I hadn't blocked yet. I picked up without checking caller ID, thinking it might be a client from the garage. Hello? Finally, you answer. My mom's voice was that special mix of relief and accusation. We've been trying to reach you for days. I sighed. What do you want, Mom? What do I want? I want you to act like the son I raised. Your sister and those children are about to be homeless, and you're ignoring their calls while living in a big empty house all by yourself. I had to laugh at that. Big empty house? Mom, it's a modest 3-bedroom in a middle-class neighborhood, and it's not empty. I live here. You know what I mean, she snapped. You have room, they need room. It's that simple. Nothing's ever that simple, I said. Where was all this family concern when Jessica was cheating on me? When I was the one who lost everything? There was a pause on the line. Then, in a softer voice, she said, that was different. How? How was it different? I demanded. You're a man, she said. Like that explained everything. Men can take care of themselves. Amber has children. And there it was. The double standard that had defined my entire relationship with my family. I was expected to handle everything on my own, to sacrifice, to be the strong one. But Amber, she got endless excuses. Mom, I said, keeping my voice calm, I worked 80-hour weeks for 2 years to afford this house. I took online classes after 12-hour shifts at the garage. I lived in an apartment where the bathroom ceiling leaked when the upstairs neighbor took a shower. I did all that by myself, without help from anyone, especially not my family. So no, Amber can't live with me. She made her choice when she sided with Jessica, and now she can deal with the consequences. She made a mistake, my mom insisted. People make mistakes. Yeah, they do. I agreed. And sometimes those mistakes have consequences that can't be fixed with a simple sorry. This is one of those times. So you'll punish the children too? They didn't do anything wrong. It was a low blow, using my niece and nephew against me. I loved those kids, even though I hadn't seen them much since the divorce. But I knew what would happen if I let Amber move in. She'd never leave. And eventually, I'd end up supporting all three of them while she went back to her old ways. The kids have grandparents with a 4-bedroom house, I pointed out. Why aren't they moving in with you and Dad? Another telling pause. Your father and I are too old to have children running around. We need our peace and quiet. They wanted to use my house as a dumping ground for Amber's problems, so they wouldn't have to deal with them. Well, I need my peace and quiet too, I said. After the past 2 years, I've earned it. This isn't over, my mom warned before hanging up. She was right about that, at least. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next day, I came home from work to find Amber's car parked in my driveway. She was sitting on my front porch with her kids, surrounded by suitcases and garbage bags full of clothes. What the hell is this? I asked as I got out of my truck. We got evicted, she said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. We have nowhere else to go. The kids looked confused and tired. I felt bad for them, but this level of manipulation made my blood boil.
She said defiantly.
So you thought you'd just
said
show up
no,
at my house with
but
all
I
your
know
stuff
you didn't really
without
mean
even asking
You
if it
wouldn't
was
let
okay?
your own niece and nephew be homeless. She was trying to back me into a corner, using the kids as shields. It was a dirty move, but exactly what I'd expect from her. Get in your car and leave, I said firmly. Now. Or what? She challenged. You'll call the cops on your own sister? With her kids right here? I took a deep breath. Amber, this isn't going to work. I'm not letting you guilt me into this. Take the kids to mom and dad's. They won't take us, she admitted. They said they're too old for kids. Then call Jessica, I suggested. You two were best friends, remember? Shopping buddies. She can put you up. Amber's face darkened. Jessica is... We're not really talking anymore. Shocking, I muttered. Look, I feel for the kids, I really do. But you can't stay here. You're a real piece of work, Amber spat. Acting all high and mighty because you've got a house now. Newsflash, you're still the same loser Jessica cheated on. No wonder she couldn't stay faithful. Who would want to be with someone so selfish and cold? And just like that, any guilt I might have felt vanished. That was the real Amber. The one who had mocked my pain, who had chosen Jessica over her own brother, who was now trying to manipulate me using her children. Get off my property, I said coldly. Now, or I really will call the cops. She must have seen something in my face that told her I meant it, because she started gathering up her bags. Come on, kids, she said loudly. Your uncle doesn't want us. We'll figure something out on our own, like we always do. A week after Amber's little stunt on my porch, I thought things would finally settle down. I had my house, my business, my peace, but people like her and Jessica, they don't go down without one last desperate attempt. I knew better, so I took my caution. So, the morning after Amber's stunt on my porch, I went straight to the county clerk's office and filed for a no trespassing order against her. The process was easier than I expected. Turns out when someone shows up with bags and kids trying to force their way into your home, that's actual grounds for concern. The police officer I spoke to said I had enough evidence to enforce it immediately. She also suggested installing cameras in case Amber tried anything again. So that's exactly what I did. By noon, I had security cameras covering every inch of my property, with motion alerts sent straight to my phone. Let Amber try another sob story ambush. I'd have the cops at my doorstep before she could get comfortable. But then Jessica showed up out of nowhere. It was late, close to midnight, and I was just getting home from the garage. My porch light caught the figure sitting on my front steps, arms wrapped around herself. It took me a second, but when she looked up, I recognized her. Jessica. She looked terrible. Nothing like the put-together woman who used to flaunt new jewelry on Instagram while mocking me behind my back. Her hair was a mess. She had bags under her eyes, and she looked smaller somehow, like life had finally knocked her down a few pegs. Matt, she said, her voice weak. I didn't know where else to go. I laughed at the sheer audacity. Not my problem, I said, stepping around her to unlock my door. Please, she said, standing quickly. Just talk to me. I sighed. Talk about what, Jessica? How you cheated on me for years? How you ran through the divorce money and got dumped? Or maybe how you encouraged my sister to turn against me? Pick one. She flinched, but I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. I made mistakes, she whispered, swallowing hard. I was stupid. I thought... She stopped, rubbing her arms like she was trying to hold herself together. I thought I had everything figured out, but I didn't. He left me, Matt.
Just like that. One day I woke up and he was gone. Took everything. I lost my job, my apartment. I'm back at my mom's place, and she's threatening to kick me out. Sounds like karma, I said, stepping inside. She grabbed my arm before I could close the door. I loved you, she blurted, tears in her eyes. I know I messed up, but we had something real. Don't you ever miss it? I stared at her for a long moment, then smiled. No, I said, and shut the door in her face. I stood there listening as she cried outside for a minute before finally giving up and leaving. I didn't feel a damn thing. She was just another person from my past, desperate to claw her way back in. But that door was locked, and I was never opening it again. Amber must have found out about Jessica's failed attempt, because 2 days later, my parents showed up unannounced. I opened the door to see my mom with her arms crossed, my dad already looking pissed. We need to talk, my mom said, stepping past me into the house like she still had authority over me. I let them in, if only to get it over with. They didn't waste time. Your sister is in trouble, my dad started. She needs a place to stay. A good son would help her. A good son? I repeated, laughing. Funny. I don't remember hearing from you when I was the one who needed help. My mom's face hardened. That was different. You're a man. Amber has children. And I told her to take them to you, I shot back. But I guess your peace and quiet is more important, huh? You want me to be the responsible one, but only when it benefits you. My dad stood up, voice cold. You're selfish. You let money change you. You're not the son we raised. That hit, but not in the way they intended. I just nodded. You're right. I'm not the son you raised. That guy would have let himself be guilted into taking care of a woman who betrayed him. That guy would have kept giving to people who never gave back. That guy would have let his family walk all over him. I looked them both in the eye. But that guy's gone, and you should probably leave. My mom huffed, grabbing her purse. You'll regret this. Doubt it, I said, holding the door open. They left without another word. I closed the door behind them, locked it, and stood there for a second, taking it all in. I wasn't their son anymore. Good. I didn't need to be. I had a house, a business, a future. I built it all from scratch. And as I stood in my own home with nobody left to drag me down, I realized something. I'd never been freer in my entire life. Story 4. My brother knocked up my wife while carrying his kid. My dad gave them the business I built like it was nothing, so I let it crash and built one they'll never reach. Now after he ruined everything, they are begging for my help. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey, I've been debating whether to post this for a while. Not really looking for advice or anything. Just feels like I need to put it somewhere, and maybe someone's been through something similar. I'm not a writer or anything, so sorry if this gets a bit long or messy. Just trying to explain it the way it happened. So, 34 male. I was married to Hannah, 32 female, for 6 years. Together for a bit longer than that. We had a pretty normal life, or so I thought. Small apartment in the suburbs, decent jobs, weekend grocery runs, fighting over where to order takeout from, watching crime shows until one of us fell asleep. That kind of thing. It wasn't always exciting, but it felt stable, comfortable. You don't really expect things to blow up when everything seems steady. I worked for my dad's logistics company for most of my adult life, not as just another employee. I was the one that made things actually function. I handled the books, set up the online systems, dealt with all the accounting and invoicing. I even got us our first major contract. Without me, the company wouldn't be what it was. I don't say that to brag. It's just facts. Then there's Jason, my younger brother. He's 28, and he's always been the golden boy. He once borrowed my truck to help a friend move, told me it'd be back by noon. Came back 3 days later, dented, low on gas, and reeking like it hosted a circus. Didn't apologize, just said, stuff happens. I covered for him. Told Dad it was my fault for not laying ground rules. That's who I was. The guy always fixing his mess. Should have seen it coming. You know the type. Doesn't take anything seriously. Messes around. Fails upward somehow. He's good at talking. Has that smile that makes people let things slide. My dad gave him more second chances than I can count. I always figured, hey, whatever. He's my brother, right? He'll grow up eventually. Anyway, about a year ago, Hannah told me she was pregnant. I was shocked, but in a good way. We'd talked about it before, but we weren't actively trying or anything. Still, once she said it, I was excited. I pictured the usual stuff. setting up a nursery, baby-proofing the apartment, reading dad tips online like an idiot. I even bought a tiny beanie for the kid because it was on sale and I thought it looked cute. But after the first couple weeks, things just started to shift. She wasn't acting how I expected. I figured she'd be more excited, but instead, she got distant, cold, hard to read. I'd ask her how she was feeling and she'd just say, "Fine." I'd try to help out around the house more, and she'd act like I was annoying her. I assumed it was hormones or pregnancy stress and didn't want to make it about me, so I brushed it off. Then the phone thing started. She used to leave her phone lying around without thinking twice. Now it was like an extension of her hand, always face down. Notifications silenced, taking calls in the other room. And when Jason came around, which started happening more often, I noticed something strange between them. Not anything obvious, just tension. The kind that makes you uncomfortable even though nothing is technically wrong. It got in my head. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. I didn't want to believe anything bad was happening, but the feeling wouldn't go away. One night, I must have sat on that porch for a solid 20 minutes, just staring at the street. My mind was blank, but buzzing at the same time. Then I realized her iPad was on the coffee table inside. Same iCloud account. I went back in, quiet, like I didn't want to alert suspicion even though I wasn't even doing anything wrong, just confirming what was already hitting me like a truck. Please be nothing. Please just be work emails or dumb Pinterest boards. It wasn't. Open the iPad. Messages were synced. There were photos. Not those kinds of photos, but ones that still gut-punched me. A selfie of her and Jason at a coffee shop I didn't even know she liked. Another one at the park. That stupid duck pond where I took her on our second date. She looked happy in them. Relaxed. That goofy smile she always said she only made around me? Yeah, there it was. Aimed at Jason like he invented air. And then a screenshot of a flight confirmation. 2 seats. Same destination we'd been saving up for the past year. Except it was for a long weekend in November. And I wasn't invited. Just her. And Jason. When she came out of the shower, I didn't say anything. I kept quiet for 2 days. Just observing. Thinking. Watching how she acted. She kissed me goodnight like nothing was wrong. Made her tea in the morning. Smiled at me like she wasn't sleeping with my brother. After sitting on it for a couple more days, I finally said something. We were sitting on the couch, watching TV. I muted the show and looked at her. "I think we should do a DNA test once the baby's born," I said. She went dead silent for about 3 seconds. You know that silence? That eerie, TV mute, storms coming silence? Yeah. Then she exploded. "How dare you accuse me?" she screamed, like I just accused her of plotting world domination. "Do you seriously think I'd lie to you? While I'm pregnant? With your child?" I opened my mouth to respond, but nope, she was on a roll. "You don't trust me. That's what this is. You're trying to control me, and I'm done pretending this is normal. This is not okay." She started pacing, like she was building momentum. "I've been throwing up every morning, dragging myself to those awful appointments, feeling like crap every single day, and this is how you treat me." At this point, her voice was bouncing off the walls like an old-school pinball machine. "You're basically calling me a liar, a cheater, a fraud. You know what? I'm starting to think you're the one with issues. You're paranoid. You're a freak about this stuff. You sit and stew in your own thoughts until you invent some fantasy where I'm the villain and you're this poor betrayed guy." And then she dropped what she thought was her mic moment. "You just ruined this pregnancy for me. This was supposed to be a happy time. And now look at what you've done. Congratulations. You broke it." I stayed calm the whole time. When she finally paused to catch her breath, I said, "If there's nothing, then what's the issue with doing a simple test?" She just looked at me, stunned again, then stormed off into the bedroom. Didn't talk to me for the rest of the night. After that, things got worse. She didn't yell anymore. She just avoided. Every time I brought it up, she'd say, "Not this again," or "Why are you so obsessed with this?" And then shut it down. She refused to even acknowledge Jason's name. At one point, she told me, "I don't even like your brother." And I swear I almost laughed. Then, about a week later, I came home early from work. I wasn't trying to catch anything. I had a bad headache and decided to just skip the afternoon. Took the side door in, walked through the garage. That's when I heard her in the living room. She was on the phone, on speaker. She didn't hear me come in. She was pacing, talking fast, didn't notice I was standing around the corner near the stairs. She said, "Mike's asking for a paternity test. He's doubting us." Then Jason's voice, "Crap. Did you say anything?" Hannah said, "I panicked. I didn't know what to say. What do we do if he actually makes me take it?" Jason said, "He's just bluffing. Don't worry about it. Just keep acting normal. My whole chest tightened. I didn't make a sound. I backed up slowly, went out the same way I came in. I drove around for a while after that. Didn't even know where I was going. Just kept turning onto random roads until it got dark. I slept in the car that night. Didn't want to see her. Didn't want to talk. I didn't have a plan yet. But I knew I wasn't going to pretend anymore. And I definitely wasn't going to protect them. So I called Jason and told him to meet me. I didn't want to wait for a lab result to tell me what I already felt in my bones. I wanted to hear it from him, the guy who used to be my brother. So I called him up, told him to meet me near the old auto shop on Creekside. Neutral ground. Quiet, out of the way. He showed up late, wearing sunglasses like we were in some bad spy movie. I was leaning against my car, arms crossed, eyes locked on him the moment he stepped out. "What's going on?" he asked, trying way too hard to sound casual. "You tell me." I nodded toward the bench. We both sat. Awkward silence for a second. Then I said it. "What the hell are you doing sneaking around with Hannah?" His face twitched. Not fear. Guilt. The kind you don't fake. "We're just friends, man." He scratched the back of his neck. Classic Jason move. "She's been struggling. I've been there. That's it." Coffee shop across town. The duck pond. The flight in November. I hit him with everything. One by one. "That's your idea of helping?" He went quiet. Real quiet. "You slept with her, didn't you?" I didn't need him to say it, but I wanted to hear it. He didn't look at me when he said, "It was a mistake." I clenched my jaw. Sat there still as stone. "You know she's pregnant," I said, voice flat. He flinched. "So I'll ask you straight. Is it yours?" More silence. Then he let out a breath like it weighed 10 pounds. "I think so." "You think?" "She told me it might be." "And you didn't feel the need to tell me that earlier?" He shook his head. "I didn't know what to do, Mike. I didn't plan any of this. You just showed up, smiled, acted innocent, and kept your brother's wife while shaking his hand at dinner." He looked like he was going to cry, but I didn't care. I stood up. "You're going to keep pretending this is something you tripped into? Like it was bad weather or an accident?" He said nothing. "You're a coward, Jason. And now you're going to be a dad to a kid you made while wrecking your own brother's life." Still nothing. Just sat there, shrinking by the second. "Thanks for the confirmation," I said, and walked off. That was all I needed. I didn't yell, didn't throw a punch. I wanted truth, and I got it. There was a family event coming up, my dad's birthday. Big thing. Everyone shows up. Friends, relatives, people I haven't seen since dial-up internet. I usually dreaded those things. Too many fake hugs, too much small talk. But this time, I was actually looking forward to it. I don't know, maybe I was finally feeling good about where I stood, ready to show up and not feel like the background character in my own family. Like maybe, for once, I wasn't walking into a setup. But that peace? It didn't last long. I overheard the phone call. And man, everything flipped right there. Not in a crazy rage way, more like a switch got hit and everything just went cold. I didn't even feel angry anymore. Just done. I didn't confront her after that. I didn't slam doors or throw accusations around. I acted like everything was fine. That was probably the weirdest part. Pretending. Like I hadn't heard her say, "What do we do?" So I figured, what better time? If they wanted to lie to my face and act like nothing was going on, then I was going to make sure everyone got to hear the truth, and not through whispers or private messages. I wanted to say it once, clear and direct, in front of every person they cared about. So I stayed chill for the next few days. Hannah kept doing her thing, acting like nothing was wrong. She was texting a lot, glued to her phone, taking random calls outside again. I stopped asking questions. I stopped trying to have the talk. Every time she looked at me, I think she knew something had changed, but I think she convinced herself I had let it go. That's what guilt does sometimes. It makes people believe they're getting away with it because you're quiet. Jason texted me the day before the dinner asking if I'd be coming. I told him I wouldn't miss it. He sent back a thumbs up emoji. I didn't reply. Saturday came, and we drove to my parents' place together. I didn't say much. She didn't notice, or maybe she didn't want to. When we got there, everyone was there early because my mom made her famous lasagna. Jason was already there, of course. He walked up, gave me a pat on the back like he wasn't sneaking around with my wife. I gave him a look and he flinched just a little. Dinner started around 7. I sat at the far end of the table, right next to Hannah. Jason was a few seats down. My dad was at the head, smiling wide, making jokes like usual. Then it was my turn. I stood up slowly, took my time. My family quieted down like they always do when someone stands to speak. I looked at my dad first. "Happy birthday," I said. "Thanks for everything you've done. For the company. For raising us." He nodded and smiled, raised his glass. Then I turned to the rest of the table. And since this is a family event, I said, I just wanted to share some news. My family got quiet again. Someone joked, "Don't tell me you're moving." I ignored that. I looked right at Hannah. She froze, fork halfway to her mouth. Then I turned toward Jason, who suddenly had the fakest smile I'd ever seen. So when I stood up in front of everyone and said, "She's pregnant, but not with my child. She's pregnant with his." I wasn't guessing. I knew. And the best part? They did too. Jason's face went ghost white. Hannah looked like the floor opened beneath her. No one clapped, no one defended, just silence. The kind that stings worse than words. Every single person went dead silent. I didn't yell. I didn't point. I just said it like a fact. Because it was. Jason's mouth opened, but no words came out. Hannah dropped her fork. My mom gasped. My dad stood up halfway, like he didn't know whether to sit back down or stop me. I looked back at my dad and said, "Thought you should know who your future heir really is." And then I sat down. I didn't wait for a reaction. I didn't stick around for the aftermath. I got up, walked into the house, grabbed my keys off the counter, and left, quietly. I found out later from my cousin that the dinner fell apart within minutes. My mom burst into tears. Jason tried to deny it, even called me paranoid. But Hannah didn't say a word, just sat there frozen, like a statue with a guilt complex. My dad ended the night early and told everyone to go home. No one clapped, no one defended them. That silence I walked away from. It followed them around like a shadow. I could still hear the shouting starting behind me as I pulled out of the driveway. That night, I drove around again, parked at this small rest area by the lake, just sat there for a while. I don't even remember what I was thinking. My brain was just blank. I wasn't even sad. It felt like I had finally finished something, like closing a book you should have stopped reading months ago. With that behind me, I drove home the next morning. When I walked in, she was already up, sitting at the table, drinking her tea like she did every morning. She didn't look shocked to see me. She didn't even look nervous. She just looked tired. That's the only way I can describe it. I dropped my keys on the counter and stood there for a second. I didn't know where to start. She finally said something first. "So, you really had to do that last night?" I let out a short laugh. Not a real one, just the kind that slips out when someone says something ridiculous. "You serious?" I said. She looked at me for the first time. "You embarrassed me, in front of your whole family." I shook my head. "No, Hannah, you did that. I just stopped covering for you." She rolled her eyes. "We could have talked in private." "We did," I said. "I asked for the test. You flipped. I asked you again, calmly, and you acted like I was insane." She went quiet again, just stared into her mug like it had answers at the bottom. I walked over and sat down across from her. "I saw the photos, Hannah. You and him at that coffee place. At the park. Our duck pond. The one I took you to when we first started dating. You looked happy in those. Way happier than you've looked with me lately. That smile you said was just for me? Guess you lent it out." I paused, then added, "And the flight confirmation. 2 tickets. Same trip we were saving up for. The one I thought we'd finally take together. Except you're going with him. November, right? Long weekend getaway? Just you and your upgrade." She didn't flinch, just sipped her tea like she was getting through something mildly inconvenient. I stepped back, shaking my head. "You were gonna let me pay the bills while you packed your bag for him. That wasn't confusion, Hannah. That was commitment. So tell me, what was the end game? Keep me around for stability while you played house with my brother on the side? Or were you hoping I'd stay blind just long enough to help you pack your toothbrush?" She finally looked at me, not guilty, not teary, just tired, like I was the one being unreasonable. "It's not that simple," she said. "No? Enlighten me." She set the mug down and shrugged. "You were always busy, always working, always stressed. Jason, he's just easier. He listens. He makes me feel seen." I blinked. "So that's it? He makes you feel seen and suddenly vows don't matter?" She folded her arms. "You think being reliable is enough? You show up, pay bills, do what you think a good guy should do, but you're never really here. You don't talk. You don't notice things. He does." I let out a small laugh, the kind that has zero humor in it. "So you sleep with my brother because he's got better conversation skills?" She didn't even flinch. "It's more than that. He makes me feel wanted, like I matter. You were just stuck in routine. Jason's not afraid to take risks. He lives." I stared at her. "You mean he's irresponsible, reckless? The same guy who crashed my truck, ghosted his last job, and can't hold a relationship for more than 6 months. That's your standard now?" She looked down at the table. "He made me feel something. You made me feel stuck." I leaned back in the chair, stared at the ceiling for a second, then locked eyes with her again. "You made your choice, Hannah. You texted him while I was asleep next to you. Over and over. You planned trips with him using the money I earned. You didn't just trip and fall into this. You built it. Brick by brick. She didn't deny it, just kept sitting there. Is it his kid? I asked, flat. She hesitated, then said, I don't know. That one landed. I felt it, even though I already knew. I ran a hand down my face, voice low. I built a future around this. Around you. I worked extra hours so we'd have savings for the baby. I read reviews on strollers at 1 a.m. I gave everything I had to make this life work. She looked up but didn't say a word. You didn't fall for him, Hannah. You settled for him because he was around. Because he made you feel important while I was busy doing the work that kept everything from falling apart. She said nothing. That was maybe the worst part. There was no big excuse, no fight, no regret. Just a woman who chose chaos because it gave her attention. I stood up. No need to drag it out any longer. Congrats, I said, grabbing my bag. You traded up to a guy who makes you feel alive. Let's see how that works out once the diapers start piling up. I didn't wait for a reply. She didn't offer one. I stood up, grabbed my duffel bag from behind the door where I left it the other day. Started tossing clothes in, not even folding them. Just enough to get by for a couple weeks. She watched me, but didn't stop me. Where are you going? She asked. Somewhere that isn't here. She sniffed a little, like she wanted to cry, but nothing came out. I paused at the door. I meant it when I said I wanted a test, I told her. You're gonna do it. You're not gonna ghost me on that. I deserve to know. She nodded without looking at me. Okay. I walked out and didn't look back. Not long after. I ended up at my friend's place. He's one of those people who doesn't push. He saw my face when I showed up at his door, handed me the spare key without asking anything, and just said, Couch is yours. Fridge has leftovers. Wi-Fi's on the note. That's it. Exactly what I needed. I spent the first couple days just lying there, not really doing anything. I wasn't angry. It was more like my brain was on airplane mode. The silence felt better than talking anyway. I ignored my phone most of the time. I didn't want to see texts from Hannah. I didn't want to hear from Jason. I didn't even want to talk to my mom, and we're usually close. But my dad kept calling. Same time every day. Didn't say much in the voicemails, just call me when you can. I finally picked up on the fourth day, mostly to stop the calls. He didn't waste time with small talk. Just said, You coming by the house? Like everything was fine. I said, Probably not. He paused, then said, We need to talk. Just us. I could tell from his tone he wasn't calling to check in on me. So I went. Not because I wanted to hear his side, but because I needed to say mine, clearly and directly. He was in his usual chair when I walked in, reading over some paperwork like nothing had happened. I sat down across from him, didn't say anything. He looked up, nodded like I'd just walked in late from a shift. No tension, no shame. Just straight to business. Then he said, I think you need to let this go. I kept waiting for him to say, but I'm disappointed in both of them. He never did. My first thought was, let what go? I didn't even respond right away because I wanted to make sure I heard him right. He continued, There's a baby involved, and maybe things happened the wrong way, but you can't undo that now. I just blinked. I couldn't believe that was the first thing out of his mouth. He went on like he had this whole thing figured out in his head. Jason wants to do the right thing now. He's ready to step up. Maybe it's time to let him and Hannah be together, build something new, give the baby a proper family. I actually let out this dry laugh. Not because it was funny, but because I was stunned at how detached he sounded. Like we were negotiating office chairs or something, not talking about my wife cheating on me with my brother. I said, You're serious? And he nodded like, Yeah, this was the logical next step. I leaned back, ran my hand over my face, and just stared at the ceiling for a second. I told him, That's the guy you want to pass everything down to? The guy who slept with my wife behind my back and then didn't even have the balls to admit it until I exposed it at your birthday? My dad didn't budge. He knows he messed up, but he's still your brother. He wants to make things right. That's when I realized he wasn't going to pick sides. He wasn't even going to pretend he was disappointed. He just wanted to patch it up and move on, for the sake of appearances, for the sake of the business, for family. Then came the part that really sealed it. He said, You also need to think about the company. Clients notice things. People talk. This could hurt the business if we're not careful. I leaned forward and said, You think clients care about family drama? They care about who gets the job done. And that's never been Jason. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He knew I was right. All this time, I thought I was working for something real. Turns out I was just patching holes in a sinking ship. That's when I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't need him to back me up. I didn't need anyone in that house to get it. They chose who they were. Now I was choosing who I'd be. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's what he was worried about. The image, not the betrayal. I looked at him, flat out, and said, I'm selling my shares. His eyes widened. What? I repeated it, clearer this time. I'm done. I'll talk to a lawyer. You can give Jason the keys. I want no part of this anymore. Not the company, not the family dinners, not the lies. He didn't say anything for a long minute, just looked at me like I'd said something offensive. Maybe to him I had. I don't really care, so I left. Just like that. I followed through too. Found a lawyer, told them I wanted to get out clean. Didn't care if I lost a little money in the process. I just didn't want to be tied to it anymore. The lawyer was confused at first, kept asking if I was sure. I said I was. In the middle of all that, Jason texted me. Once. Just a plain message. Can we talk? I didn't reply. A couple days later, he tried again. I didn't mean for things to go that far. I never wanted to hurt you. I stared at it for a bit, then locked my phone and didn't answer. There's no version of that conversation that ends with me feeling better, so what's the point? Hannah messaged me too, about a week after, said, I know I ruined everything. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. It didn't even make me angry. I just read it once, left it there. Some people think closure comes from a long talk and crying it out. For me, it was just silence. Not answering felt like the best thing I could have done. I didn't need her explanations. I'd already heard enough. Jason ended up running the business. Not officially, but my dad let him take over the day-to-day stuff. At first, I didn't care. Then I started hearing things through mutual contacts. Missed payments, clients walking away, drivers quitting. Word was spreading. Things weren't being handled right. Schedules were off. Mistakes were happening. I didn't cheer. I wasn't happy about it. But I wasn't sorry either. You can't run something you never respected in the first place. That company meant something to me because I helped build it. For Jason, it was just handed over. Then the call came. My dad. Middle of the week, middle of the day. No small talk, just, you free to talk about the company? I just sat there for a second, staring at the screen. Then I picked up. He didn't waste time. Things are a mess. Jason's trying, but it's not working. I think we both know he's not built for this. We're bleeding clients. I need help. I didn't say anything right away. I let that hang for a second. Help with what? Picking up the pieces? He sighed. You know how this business runs. You always did. I shouldn't have let things go the way they did. That part almost made me laugh. You mean letting your golden boy run it into the ground while you pretended nothing was wrong? He didn't argue, just said, I'm asking you, not as your father, but as someone who knows what this company really needs. I let that sit a bit longer. Then I said, I'm not coming back to fix what he broke. I warned you. You made your choice. He said, so that's it? That's just the consequence, I told him. I ended the call without yelling, without emotion, just the truth. I meant it when I walked away, and I wasn't going to be their emergency exit now that things weren't going their way. I moved, rented a small apartment in a different city, found work doing consulting for logistics firms. Not glamorous, but quiet. No office politics, no family drama, just work and peace. And that peace? Man, it felt better than anything I'd felt in years. By then, I didn't block them. I wanted that door closed, not locked. I guess part of me still wanted to know if they'd sink or swim. Not that I cared, but it's like when you walk away from a burning building. You don't want to be near it, but you still glance over your shoulder to see if it collapses. Jason tried one more time, texted me out of nowhere. I know I don't deserve it, but if you ever want to talk, I'm here. I didn't reply. I didn't even finish reading the preview in the notification. I swiped it away like junk mail. That was the last time I heard from him. But Hannah? She came back around in a way I didn't expect. It was a Thursday, late afternoon. I was in the middle of a client call when I saw her name pop up on my phone. I ignored it, obviously, but she left a voicemail, something she hadn't done the last few times. Later that night, I listened to it, just out of curiosity, I guess. Her voice was shaky. Hey, I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that Jason left. He's gone. I'm alone with the baby. I made a mistake. I know that now. You didn't deserve any of it. I wish I saw things clearly back then. Click. I sat there staring at my phone. The baby. Right. I hadn't thought about the DNA test in weeks. I never got the result. I told her to do it. She nodded. Then silence. Nothing after that. Part of me thought she never went through with it. That maybe she was just going to pretend I didn't exist, raise the baby and hope I didn't follow up. But now she wanted to talk. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of her voicemail, but because of what it probably meant. Jason bailed. Classic.
Dude couldn't even handle a 9 to 5, let alone fatherhood. Of course he left. And now she was sitting in the ruins of what they built on lies. Still, I didn't respond. I had nothing to say. I wasn't her rescue plan. A few days later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name handwritten across the front. Inside was a printed page. A DNA test result. I don't know if she sent it or maybe one of her friends who felt bad. But there it was in black and white. The child was Jason's. 99.98% match. I stared at that number for a long time. Not because I was surprised, but because it was now real. It wasn't a hunch anymore. It was fact. All the times I thought maybe I was overthinking, maybe I was being paranoid, all of it gone. I wasn't the father. I sat with that thought for a while. It wasn't grief or loss or even anger. It was just final, like the last puzzle piece snapped in. And then, something wild happened. I got a call from an old client, one of our biggest back at the family business. The guy who gave us our first big break years ago, when no one else would take a chance on us. He told me he tracked me down through a mutual connection and asked if I was still consulting. I said I was. He goes, "Good, because we pulled our contract from your dad's company. Too messy over there. But I liked working with you. You made things work. I want to move it all under your name, if you're interested." I almost dropped the phone. That contract was huge. It could be the foundation of something real. Not just freelance jobs and invoices, an actual business of my own. And just like that, something clicked in me. Maybe this whole thing didn't just blow up for nothing. Maybe it was supposed to happen. Maybe walking away was the first right move I'd made in a long time. I said yes. We scheduled a meeting. And now I'm building again. Slowly, carefully. Not for anyone else. Not for legacy or image or proving a point. Just for me. But here's the thing. That wasn't the last time I heard from Hannah. Last week she showed up. In person. Yeah, I know. Wild. I opened the door and there she was. Same tired eyes, holding the baby on her hip, standing like she wasn't sure what she was even doing there. She said, "Can I talk to you? Just for a minute?" I didn't answer. What did I do? Nothing. Just stood there, staring at her. She shifted the baby in her arms and gave me this look. The kind of look people give when they know they're not going to win, but they still want to try anyway. "Can I talk to you? Just for a minute?" she said. I stepped out, closed the door behind me. I leaned against the porch railing. "Then why are you here, Hannah?" She looked down at the baby, like he was going to give her the right words. "He doesn't have anyone else," she said finally. "Jason's gone, moved out of state, blocked me on everything. My job cut my hours. It's been hard, and I just thought you should know that I've had time to think about everything." I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. She could ramble if she wanted. I'd wait. She kept going. "You were right. About the test. About him. About all of it. I thought Jason was going to step up. But the second things got real, he bailed. I thought I was getting this exciting life. And instead, I got bills and silence." She looked up, tears already forming. "You were always solid. You showed up. I just didn't see it then." That's when I finally spoke. "Yeah, you didn't." And that was all I said for a minute. I let it sit. She wiped her face with her sleeve. "I'm not asking you for anything. I'm not expecting anything. I don't know. Maybe I just needed to see you. Maybe I needed you to see him." She tilted the baby toward me like that was supposed to mean something. I didn't move. "He's your nephew," she added. I just shook my head slowly. "He's Jason's son, and you made your choices." She looked down again. "I've been rebuilding my life," I told her. "You and Jason tore everything down. I didn't ask for that. I didn't deserve it. But I took it, and I built something better." She looked like she was about to say something else, but I cut her off. Not harsh, just direct. "You showed up for closure, but I got mine a long time ago." Then I turned, opened the door, and went back inside. Didn't slam it, didn't lock it, just closed it and left her on the porch. She stood there for maybe another minute, probably hoping I'd change my mind. I didn't. Eventually, she walked back to her car and drove off. And that was that. It's been a few months since then. I haven't heard from her or Jason. No texts, no random pop-ups, nothing. The consulting gig I landed with that old client? It turned into something bigger. I now run my own small firm. Lean but tight. 5 people under me. Steady contracts, no dead weight. We do things by the book. We don't overpromise and we actually deliver. Clients like that. Turns out honesty and consistency still matter in this world. Funny thing? One of the drivers from my dad's company hit me up last week. Told me the old place is barely hanging on. Contracts dried up. My dad's health is shaky. Jason's name is poison in the industry now. He got a job at some warehouse out of town,
Guess his charm wore off when people actually expected results. I didn't laugh. I didn't celebrate. I just nodded. That's karma. It's not loud. It doesn't show up with a warning. It just takes its time and hits where it hurts. Reputation, money, pride, and it always hits eventually. I never got revenge. Didn't destroy anyone. Didn't drag names through the mud. I just told the truth. I walked away, and I built a better life while they tried to piece together the one they shattered. Now I get up in the morning, make my own coffee, answer to no one. I don't flinch when my phone rings. I don't second guess texts. I don't wonder what's being said behind my back. Peace is loud when you used to live with chaos. And honestly, the best revenge wasn't finding someone new, or flexing on social media, or proving anything to anybody. It was just being better, better off, better alone, better than them. Story 5. Dad suspended me from home until I apologized to my golden child sister. I just said, all right. The next morning, I was gone. And what followed destroyed them all. Sup Reddit. My dad suspended me from my own house because I defended myself from my sister. I said, all right, and walked out the next morning. 5 years later, they're begging me to come back while I'm living my best life. Here's how their perfect family fell apart. I'm Justin, 22 male, and this story starts when I was 17. But to understand why I walked out, you need to understand what life was like before that day. My sister Ashley, 15 female at the time, has been the golden child since birth. I'm talking about the kind of favoritism that's so obvious even strangers notice it. When we'd go out to dinner, servers would comment on how the daughter must be the favorite, based on how my parents acted. That's not an exaggeration. It happened multiple times. Growing up, Ashley got everything she wanted. New clothes every season while I wore hand-me-downs from cousins. The latest phone while I used a 3-year-old model. Dance lessons, art classes, summer camps. Whatever she asked for, she got. Meanwhile, I was told to be responsible and save for college whenever I wanted anything. The rules were different too. Ashley's curfew was whenever she felt like coming home. Mine was 9 p.m. on weekends, even as a senior. She could have friends over any time. I had to ask 3 days in advance, and only if Ashley didn't have plans. Her room was her private space that nobody could enter. My room. Fair game for anyone, apparently. I learned early that complaining about the double standard just made things worse. Dad would lecture me about being jealous of my sister. Mom would cry about me causing family drama. Ashley would smirk and find ways to make things worse when our parents weren't looking. By the time I was 15, I'd basically given up on equal treatment. Just kept my head down, focused on school and my part-time job at the hardware store, and counted days until college. The job started as stocking shelves, but I learned to mix paint, cut keys, and help customers find what they needed. Mr. Wilson, the owner, was a good guy who treated me like an actual person instead of an inconvenience. The hardware store became my escape. I'd volunteer for extra shifts just to avoid being home. Mr. Wilson noticed and started teaching me more. Basic plumbing, electrical work, how to read blueprints. Said I had a good head for practical stuff and shouldn't waste it on just stocking shelves. You've got common sense, he told me once. That's rarer than you think. Most people can learn facts. Not everyone can learn to think. That meant more to me than any compliment my parents ever gave. But back to that Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. Picture this. I'm in my room trying to finish calculus homework that's due the next day. Not bothering anyone, just trying to understand derivatives because Mr. Patterson's tests are brutal and I need to keep my GPA up for college applications. Had my notes spread out, textbook open, calculator and laptop all going at once. This particular assignment was worth 20% of our quarter grade, and I needed an A to maintain my average. My sister Ashley barges in without knocking. Standard operating procedure for her. She never knocked, never asked permission, just walked into my space like she owned it. This time she wanted to borrow my laptop because hers was charging, and she needed to finish some project that was due tomorrow. No, I said, not even looking up from my work. I'm using it. Come on, Justin. I just need it for like 10 minutes. Ashley, it's charging right now. Wait 30 minutes. I can't wait 30 minutes. This is due first period. I looked up at her then. And my calculus homework is due first period too. Plus, last time I let you use my laptop, you downloaded something that gave it a virus. Cost me $40 to fix. Her face got that pouty expression she uses when she's not getting her way. That wasn't my fault. The website said it was safe. The website was called freemusicdownloads.ru. Nothing about that screams safe. You're being a jerk. I'm being someone who needs his laptop for homework. Use the family computer downstairs. Mom's using it for her work stuff. Then wait for yours to charge, or do your work at school tomorrow morning. That's when her tone shifted from whiny to nasty. God, you're so selfish. You never help me with anything. You're the worst brother ever. I'd heard variations of this speech hundreds of times. Usually, I just ignored it and waited for her to leave. But this time, she wasn't leaving. Just stood there listing all my failures as a brother, while I tried to focus on derivatives. Are you even listening to me? She demanded. Nope. See? This is what I mean. You don't even care. Ashley, I have homework due tomorrow. You have homework due tomorrow. The difference is I planned ahead and you didn't. That's not my problem. Her face went red. You think you're so much better than me because you get good grades and have some stupid job. I don't think I'm better than you. I think I'm busy and you need to leave. That's when she grabbed my textbook off my desk and threw it across the room. The book hit the wall with a solid thud, pages bending, my bookmark falling out. I'd been on page 247. Now I had no idea where I'd left off. I stood up, keeping my voice level. Get out of my room. Make me. Ashley, I'm not playing this game. Get out. She responded by shoving me, hard, both hands against my chest, using all her strength. I wasn't expecting it. We're siblings, we argued, but it never got physical before. I stumbled backward, hip hitting my desk, arms flailing to catch my balance. My hand hit my water bottle, knocked it over, sent 20 ounces of water cascading across my desk. My homework, my notes, 3 hours of work, all soaked. The ink started running immediately, equations bleeding into illegible blurs. The papers I'd carefully organized started sticking together. My calculator made a sad beeping noise as water seeped into the buttons. I watched it happen in slow motion. All that work, gone. Because Ashley wanted my laptop and couldn't handle being told no. Something snapped inside me. Not anger. Anger would have been easier. This was cold, clear realization. She just destroyed hours of my work and didn't even look sorry. She looked satisfied. I grabbed her arm, not roughly but firmly, and physically moved her toward the door. Didn't yank, didn't shove back, just escorted her out like you'd remove someone from a store who was causing problems. She tried to pull away, but I kept moving her until she was in the hallway. Stay out, I said, closing the door. She started pounding on it immediately. I'm telling Dad, you put your hands on me. You're going to be in so much trouble. I didn't respond, just stood there looking at my ruined homework, water still dripping off the desk onto my carpet. 3 hours of work. Gone. And I had nothing to turn in tomorrow. 5 minutes later, Dad was pounding on my door. The banging was aggressive, the kind that rattled the frame. Justin, open this door right now. I opened it slowly. Dad stood there, face already red, veins in his neck standing out. Behind him, Ashley had tears streaming down her face. Perfect performance tears. I'd seen her turn them on and off like a faucet since she was 8. Why did you put your hands on your sister? Dad demanded before I could say anything. She was in my room destroying my property. I removed her. She says you grabbed her and shoved her into the hallway. I didn't shove her. I escorted her out after she threw my textbook and ruined my homework. Dad glanced into my room, saw the wet papers on my desk, the textbook on the floor. His expression didn't change. I don't care what she did. You don't put your hands on your sister. Ever. Ashley stood there with that smug look starting to break through the tears. She knew exactly what she was doing. This was a performance, and Dad was her audience. Look at my desk, I said, pointing. 3 hours of calculus homework. Ruined. Because she wanted my laptop and I said no. You can redo it, Dad said dismissively. It's due tomorrow morning. First period. Then you better get started. He crossed his arms. But first, you need to apologize to your sister. I looked between them. Dad with his self-righteous expression. Ashley with her fake tears and hidden smile. The wet homework dripping onto my carpet. For what? I asked. She came into my room, demanded my stuff, destroyed my property, and physically attacked me when I wouldn't give in. What exactly am I apologizing for? For putting your hands on her. Now. I stared at my father, this man who was supposed to protect me, support me, believe me. He'd already decided I was guilty without even asking my side of the story. One look at Ashley's tears, and that was it. Trial over. Verdict reached. No, I said. Dad's face went from red to purple. What did you just say to me? I said no. I'm not apologizing for something I didn't do wrong. Ashley attacked me. I defended myself and my property. I'm not sorry for that. You grabbed your sister and shoved her. I escorted her out of my room after she assaulted me. There's a difference. Ashley's tears were flowing harder now, right on cue. Her shoulders were shaking with sobs that looked real if you didn't know her. but I'd watched her perfect this routine for years. The same tears she used when she wanted something expensive, the same sob that got her out of trouble at school, the same performance that had worked on our parents 1,000 times before. Assault? Dad's voice went up an octave. She's your little sister. You're twice her size. I'm 6 inches taller and maybe 30 pounds heavier. That doesn't mean she gets to hit me without consequences. She didn't hit you. She pushed you. There's a difference. The irony was amazing. When Ashley laid hands on me, it was just pushing. When I removed her from my room, it was assault. The double standard was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Dad, look at my homework. Actually look at it. He glanced at my desk, barely seeing it. I see wet paper. You can redo it. It's 3 hours of calculus. Due tomorrow. First period. I don't have 3 hours tonight because I also have English reading, a history quiz to study for, and a shift at the hardware store until 8. You should have thought of that before you put your hands on your sister. Ashley was watching this exchange with barely concealed satisfaction. The tears had magically stopped flowing. She wiped her face dramatically, leaving just enough redness to look like she'd been crying, but her eyes were sharp and calculating. I want an apology, she said, voice quivering. He scared me. I scared you? I couldn't help it. I laughed. It wasn't funny, but the audacity was so extreme, I had to laugh or I'd lose my mind. You came into my room, destroyed my property, physically attacked me, and I scared you? You grabbed me! She raised her voice, getting worked up again. You hurt my arm! Show me the bruise then. She rolled up her sleeve dramatically. There was nothing there, not a mark, because I hadn't grabbed her hard enough to leave any evidence. I'd just firmly moved her toward the door. It still hurts, even if you can't see it, she whimpered. Dad put his arm around her shoulders. Justin, apologize to your sister. Now, I looked at this scene. My father comforting my sister who just destroyed my homework and attacked me. Both of them looking at me like I was the villain. Neither of them caring about my side of the story. No, I said again. Calmer this time. Certain. That's when Dad dropped the bomb. Fine. You're suspended. I blinked. Suspended from what? I didn't do anything at school. From this house. You're grounded until you apologize to Ashley. No phone, no computer, no going out with friends, no leaving your room except for school and meals. You want to act like you don't respect your family? You can sit in your room and think about your behavior. The punishment was so wildly disproportionate that I just stood there processing it. Indefinite grounding. Solitary confinement in my own house? All because I wouldn't apologize for defending myself. For how long? I asked quietly. Until you apologize. And if I don't apologize, then you stay suspended. Your choice, Justin. This is on you. Ashley had given up pretending to cry. She was watching me with this look of triumph, waiting to see if I'd break, waiting to see if I'd fold like I always had before when they pressured me enough. I looked at my ruined homework, at my textbook on the floor, at my sister's satisfied face, at my father who'd already made up his mind without hearing my side. All right, I said. Dad looked surprised. He'd expected more fight, probably expected me to yell, to argue, to eventually give in and apologize just to make it stop. That's how it usually went. I just stared at him. Ashley was practically glowing with victory behind him. How long? I asked. Until you apologize? I looked at my ruined homework, my soaked notes, my sister's satisfied face. Then I looked at my dad, who'd already decided I was guilty without caring about what actually happened. All right, I said. Dad looked surprised. He'd expected more fight. Good. Hand over your phone and laptop. I gave them to him without argument. He left looking satisfied, Ashley trailing behind, throwing me one last smug look. I closed my door and sat on my bed. Wasn't angry, wasn't upset, just calm. Crystal clear about what I needed to do. I'd been saving money from my part-time job at the hardware store for 2 years. Had about $3,400 in my dresser drawer in an envelope. Been planning to use it for college expenses, but plans change. Spent that night packing a duffel bag. Clothes, important documents, the cash. Some personal items that actually mattered. Left behind anything I didn't absolutely need. The laptop was Dad's anyway since he'd confiscated it, and the phone was on their plan. Around midnight, I heard Ashley and Mom talking in the hallway outside my door. They weren't trying to be quiet. Probably thought I was asleep or too upset to pay attention. Ashley's voice carried clearly through my closed door. He was so mad. You should have seen his face when Dad took his phone. I thought he was going to explode. Well, he brought it on himself, Mom replied. You were just asking to borrow something. He completely overreacted. Exactly. And then he grabbed me so hard. My arm still hurts. I sat on my bed listening to this revision of history. In Ashley's version, she'd politely asked to borrow my laptop. I'd flown into a rage for no reason. She was the victim of my aggression, not the person who destroyed my homework and physically attacked me. I'm proud of you for standing up to him, Mom said. You were brave for not letting your big brother intimidate you. Thanks, Mom. I was really scared when he grabbed me. This was the problem. They weren't just enabling her behavior. They were actively rewriting events to paint her as the victim and me as the aggressor. In their minds, this story was already set. Ashley was brave for defending herself against her aggressive older brother. I was the problem child who needed to learn respect. Nothing I said would change that narrative. They'd already decided what happened, and facts didn't matter. That's what sealed it for me. That conversation in the hallway where they rewrote reality to fit their preferred version. I could live with being punished unfairly. What I couldn't live with was knowing they genuinely believed their own lies. After their voices faded away, I got up and continued packing more carefully. Went through my desk drawers and found old report cards, evidence of good grades they'd never acknowledged. Found photos from school events they'd never attended because Ashley had something more important that day. Found birthday cards from friends at school, but none from my family for the past 3 years. Everything important, everything that proved I existed and mattered, went into the backpack. Everything that tied me to this house stayed behind. Set my alarm for 5 a.m. and tried to sleep. Didn't really succeed. Kept running through the plan in my head. Uncle Bobby lived about 45 minutes away by car. I'd only been to his house twice, but I remembered the address. He'd told me once, half joking, that if I ever needed a place to crash, his door was open. Time to find out if he'd meant it. When the alarm went off at 5 a.m., I felt calm. Grabbed my backpack, took one last look around the room. 17 years of my life in this space. None of it felt worth staying for. Walked downstairs quietly. The house was completely silent. Left my note on the kitchen table where they'd find it first thing. Short and simple. Gone. Don't look for me. Then I walked out the front door, got in my Honda Civic, and drove to Uncle Bobby's house. The drive felt surreal. Watching the sun come up over familiar streets, knowing I wasn't going back. Every mile that passed felt like weight lifting off my shoulders. By the time I pulled into Bobby's driveway, I felt lighter than I had in years. By the time anyone woke up, I was already at my Uncle Bobby's place across town. Uncle Bobby is my dad's younger brother, but they're nothing alike. Bobby's a mechanic who owns his own shop called Bobby's Auto Repair. Real creative naming, but it worked. Never married, said he tried it once in his 20s and decided he liked his independence better. Lives in a decent 3-bedroom house he bought himself back in the early 2000s before prices went crazy. He's the family black sheep because he didn't go to college or get a respectable office job like Dad did. Dad works in insurance claims, wears a suit, goes to an office. Bobby wears coveralls, works with his hands, smells like motor oil most days. Dad always looked down on him for wasting his potential, but Bobby seemed happy in ways Dad never did. When I showed up at his door at 6 a.m. with a duffel bag, he was already awake making coffee. Mechanics keep early hours. He looked at me standing there, saw the backpack, and just nodded. Come in, kid. You look like you need coffee. Didn't ask what happened. Didn't demand explanations. Just made me sit at his kitchen table and poured me a cup with enough cream and sugar that it barely tasted like coffee anymore. You want to talk about it? He asked after a few minutes of silence. So I told him everything. Started with the laptop incident, but as I talked, it all came pouring out. Years of watching Ashley get everything while I got blamed for everything. The double standards. The favoritism so obvious that even teachers at school had commented on it. The way Mom and Dad would immediately take her side no matter what actually happened. Bobby listened without interrupting. When I got to the part about Dad suspending me indefinitely, he actually laughed. Your dad suspended you? From your own house? For defending yourself? Yeah, that's the dumbest thing I've heard in years. And I once watched a guy try to change his oil filter without draining the oil first. That made me laugh despite everything. First time I'd laughed in 24 hours. So here's the deal, Bobby said, leaning back in his chair. You can stay here as long as you need, but you're gonna work. I don't do freeloaders, family or not. What kind of work? I need help at the shop. Guy who does my oil changes and tire rotations just quit because he got some fancy job at the dealership. Position's yours if you want it. Minimum wage to start, but I'll teach you real skills. Cars, not just oil changes, real mechanical work. When do I start? Monday. Give you the weekend to get settled. You can take the spare bedroom upstairs. It's got a bed and a dresser. Not much, but it's yours. I took the deal without hesitation. This was the first time in my life someone had offered me something fair. Work for pay. Respect in exchange for effort. No games, no manipulation, no favoritism. Just honest trade. That first week was interesting. My phone had been blowing up with calls and messages, but since Dad confiscated it, all those messages went to a device sitting in his desk drawer. They had no way to reach me directly. Bobby's landline rang a few times, but he let it go to voicemail. When he finally picked up on Thursday afternoon, it was Mom. Is Justin there? I could hear her voice from across the room. Yep, we need him to come home. This has gone on long enough. He's not coming home. Bobby, this is family business. Stay out of it. Kid 17, almost 18. He made his choice. You made yours when you let Ashley walk all over him for years. That's not what happened. Sure it's not. Justin's staying here. He's got a job, he's pulling his weight, and nobody's making him apologize for things he didn't do. He hung up, looked at me. They're gonna show up eventually. You ready for that? I nodded. Yeah. Working at Bobby's shop was the best decision I'd made in years. Started with basic stuff, oil changes and tire rotations, but Bobby actually taught me. Explained how engines worked, what each part did, why things broke, and how to fix them properly instead of just replacing parts. The other guys at the shop, Jake and Tommy, were cool. Both in their 20s, both career mechanics who actually enjoyed their work. They didn't care about my age or family drama, just cared if I could hand them the right wrench and didn't complain about getting dirty. Jake especially took me under his wing. He'd been working on cars since he was 15, dropped out of high school to apprentice at a shop, now made decent money and owned a nice truck. He taught me the difference between doing a job fast and doing it right. Fast gets you more customers, he explained while we were replacing someone's transmission. Right gets you repeat customers. Repeat customers are what builds a business. Within 2 months, I was handling basic repairs independently. Brake jobs, exhaust work, minor engine diagnostics. Bobby started paying me more, $12 an hour instead of minimum wage. Not a fortune, but honest money for honest work. My 18th birthday came and went without any contact from my family. Bobby got me a toolbox, the kind with all the compartments and a good lock. Jake and Tommy pitched in for a basic tool set to fill it. Now you're official, Bobby said. Real mechanics got his own tools. That toolbox meant more to me than any birthday present my parents ever gave me. By month 4, I'd saved up enough to buy a beater truck from an auction. 1998 Ford Ranger with 180,000 miles, needed work, but the frame was solid. Bobby let me use the shop after hours to fix it up. Replaced the timing belt, did a full brake job, fixed the exhaust leak, rebuilt the carburetor. Jake helped with the electrical issues. Tommy showed me how to patch rust spots properly. 3 weeks later, I had a running truck that I'd bought and fixed with my own money and skills. That's when my family finally showed up. I was under a Honda Civic changing the oil pan gasket when I heard the shop bell ring. Rolled out on the creeper to see Dad, Mom, and Ashley standing in the bay. They looked out of place. Dad in his business casual, Mom in her department store outfit, Ashley in some designer clothes I didn't recognize. Meanwhile, I was covered in oil and dirt, wearing coveralls that had seen better days. Justin, Dad said, we need to talk. I'm working. This is important. I stood up, wiped my hands on a rag. Bobby appeared from his office, coffee cup in hand. He didn't say anything, just positioned himself where he could see everything. What do you want? I asked. Mom stepped forward. We want you to come home. This has gone on long enough. You've made your point. What point? That you were upset. We understand. But you can't just run away from your problems. I almost laughed. I didn't run away from problems. I removed myself from a situation where I was being punished for defending myself. Ashley finally spoke up. I'm sorry for what happened. Can we just move past this? Her apology sounded rehearsed, forced, like someone had told her she had to say it. What exactly are you sorry for? I asked. For the fight, for getting you in trouble. What about destroying my homework? Lying about what happened? Making yourself cry to manipulate Dad? She looked uncomfortable. I didn't lie. Yeah, you did. And you've been doing it for years. I'm just done being your punching bag. Dad's face was getting red. Justin, enough. You're coming home. This independence thing has gone on long enough. I'm 18. You can't make me do anything. You're still in high school. You need to finish your education. I am finishing. I transferred to the evening program. Graduate in 2 months. That shut him up. He didn't know I'd been going to night school while working at the shop. Didn't know I was on track to get my diploma on time despite leaving home. We're your family, Mom tried. You can't just cut us off. Watch me. Ashley was looking around the shop with this disgusted expression. You're seriously going to stay here? Working on cars like some dropout? Better than sitting at home getting everything handed to me while learning nothing useful. Her face went bright red. I'm not a dropout. Didn't say you were. But at least I'm learning actual skills instead of just learning how to manipulate people. Dad stepped forward, pointing his finger. That's enough. You're being disrespectful. And you suspended me from my own house for defending myself. Guess we're even. Bobby finally spoke up. I think you folks should leave. Justin's made his choice. Respect it. This doesn't concern you, Dad snapped. Kids living in my house, working in my shop. That makes it my concern. They stood there for another minute, clearly expecting me to cave, when I just stared back at them. Not moving, not backing down. They finally left. Ashley turned at the door. You'll regret this. Doubt it. After they left, Bobby clapped me on the shoulder. That was hard. Yeah, you did good. I finished the Honda and went back to work. Didn't cry, didn't feel bad, didn't second guess my decision. Just kept building the life I'd chosen. Graduated high school that May. Evening ceremony with about 40 other students, mostly adults finishing their degrees. Bobby came, brought Jake and Tommy with him. Took a photo of me in my cap and gown standing next to my truck. Nobody from my family showed up. Didn't expect them to, didn't invite them. But there was a small part of me that wondered if they'd come anyway. They didn't. 2 weeks after graduation, Bobby made me an offer. You've been here 9 months. Learned fast, work hard, customers like you. How about we make it official? Official how? Partnership. Not equal shares, not yet. But 20% of the shop profits. You keep working, keep learning, keep building the business with me, that percentage goes up every year. I didn't know what to say. This was more than a job. This was a future. What's the catch? I asked. No catch. You've earned it. Plus, I'm not getting any younger. Rather have someone I trust building this with me than sell to some corporate chain when I retire. We shook on it. Bobby drew up the papers legal, filed with the state. At 18 years old, I was a partial owner of a legitimate business. Summer was busy. Word got around that Bobby's shop did good work for fair prices, and the bays stayed full. We hired another mechanic, older guy named Frank, who'd been laid off from the dealership, brought in more complicated jobs, taught me advanced electrical diagnostics. By August, I'd saved enough to move into my own place. Small studio apartment, nothing fancy, but it was mine. Bobby helped me move the few things I owned, including that toolbox that meant everything. You're doing good, kid, he said after we finished. Your dad doesn't know what he lost. That statement proved more accurate than either of us knew. The calls started in September. Not from my parents, but from extended family. Aunt Karen, Grandma, even a cousin I barely remembered, all saying the same thing. I needed to come back. The family was falling apart. Ashley was out of control. I ignored most of them. But when my grandma called Bobby's shop directly, I took it. Justin, sweetheart, please talk to your parents. Why? Things are bad. Ashley's in trouble. What kind of trouble? Grandma hesitated. She's pregnant. I didn't say anything for a minute. How far along? 4 months. The father's not in the picture. Your parents are devastated. That's unfortunate. Justin, please. They need you. They needed me to apologize for defending myself. I needed them to believe me instead of automatically taking her side. We don't always get what we need. You're being cruel? No, Grandma. I'm being honest. Ashley made choices. She can deal with the consequences. I hung up. Felt bad about talking to my grandma like that. But I wasn't going back to fix problems they'd created. Jake asked what that was about. I explained the whole situation, the pregnancy, the family falling apart. Damn, he said. That's rough. Yeah. You feel bad? Little bit. Don't. They made their bed. Now they're sleeping in it. He was right. This wasn't my problem to solve. But the calls kept coming. More family, more friends, everyone saying I needed to step up and be the bigger person. Like I was somehow responsible for fixing the mess Ashley created. Then Dad showed up at the shop again. This time alone, looking older and more tired than I remembered. Justin, we need to talk. Really talk. I was changing a transmission. Didn't stop working. So talk. Ashley's pregnant. She's keeping the baby. We need help. Help with what? Everything. We can't afford a baby. Your mother's hours got cut at work. I'm barely covering the mortgage and bills. And Ashley's still in school? Sounds difficult? Don't be like that. We're family. I put down my tools and looked at him. You keep saying that. Family. Like it's supposed to mean something after you kick me out for defending myself. We didn't kick you out. You left. You suspended me indefinitely for not apologizing to Ashley after she assaulted me and destroyed my property. What was I supposed to do? We expected you to apologize and move on, not abandon your family. I didn't abandon anyone. I chose not to be a scapegoat anymore. Dad ran his hand through his hair. Look, I'm not here to argue about the past. I'm asking for help. We need money. The baby's due in 5 months, and we're not prepared. Get a second job. I'm 52 years old, Justin. I can't work 2 jobs. I was 17 working part-time and going to school. You'll figure it out. Why are you being so difficult? I turned back to the transmission. I'm not being difficult. I'm just not solving your problems anymore. Ashley wanted to act like an adult, make adult choices. Now she gets adult consequences. She's 16, old enough to get pregnant, old enough to deal with reality. Dad stood there for a long minute, finally asked, "Is this really what you want? To cut off your entire family over one argument?" It wasn't one argument. It was years of watching Ashley get away with everything while I got blamed for existing. That incident with the laptop was just the final straw. We made mistakes. We're trying to fix them. No, you're trying to get money from me because Ashley's situation is expensive and inconvenient. There's a difference. He left without another word. That winter was brutal. Not for me. Business at the shop was steady. I was learning more every day. My little apartment was warm and paid for. But my family was drowning. Through the grapevine, I heard it all. Dad had to take out a second mortgage. Mom was working 2 part-time jobs with irregular hours. Ashley had dropped out of school because she couldn't keep up with classes while pregnant. The baby was born in February. Girl. I saw the announcement on social media from some distant cousin. Ashley looked exhausted in the photo, holding this tiny wrinkled thing while my parents stood behind her looking shell-shocked. Grandma called again. "You have a niece. Congratulations to Ashley. Don't you want to meet her?" "Not particularly." "Justin, she's family." "So am I." Didn't stop them from choosing Ashley over me every single time. They're struggling. The baby needs things. Ashley's overwhelmed. Your parents are working themselves to death trying to provide. They should have thought about that before enabling Ashley's behavior for 16 years. You're being heartless. No, Grandma. I'm being realistic. They made choices. Actions have consequences. I learned that lesson when I was suspended for defending myself. Now they're learning it too. She hung up on me. Haven't spoken to her since. The calls from my family got more desperate over the next few months. Dad asking for loans. Mom suggesting I move back home to help with expenses. Ashley sending messages about how hard it was being a single teen mom, and couldn't I spare some money for baby supplies. I ignored them all. Not out of spite, but because helping them would just enable the same patterns that drove me away. They needed to face reality without me as their safety net. By summer, things got worse for them. Dad lost his job, some corporate restructuring thing. Mom's hours got cut again. They were 3 months behind on the mortgage. Meanwhile, I bought a better truck, fixed up the old Ranger and sold it for decent profit, bought a newer Silverado with lower miles. Bobby increased my profit share to 30% after we had our best year ever. I was putting money into savings, building real financial security. The contrast wasn't lost on me. Year and a half ago, I was living under their roof, following their rules, being blamed for everything Ashley did. Now I was independent, successful, building something real. And they were falling apart without me there to blame. Jake pointed it out one day while we were doing an engine swap. "It's kind of poetic, isn't it? They treated you like you were worthless. And now you're doing better than all of them combined." He was right. It was poetic. Also kind of sad, but not sad enough to go back and fix it for them. Year 2 brought the foreclosure notice. I heard about it from Aunt Karen, who'd actually been decent through all this. She didn't pressure me to come back, just kept me updated on what was happening. "They're losing the house," she said over lunch. "Bank's giving them 60 days to get current or they're out." "How much are they behind?" "About $12,000. I didn't say anything. That was roughly what I had in savings. Money I'd earned working at the shop, money I'd saved for emergencies or future opportunities. "I know what you're thinking," Karen said, "and I'm not asking you to bail them out, but I wanted you to know. Thanks for telling me. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice leaving. Your dad's always been stubborn, and your mom enabled Ashley's behavior for years. But they're still family. Family that chose Ashley over me every single time. I know. Just wanted you to have all the information." I thought about it for a few days. $12,000 would save their house, would keep them from being homeless, would solve their immediate problem. It would also teach them that I'd come running whenever they needed rescuing, that they could treat me like garbage, and I'd still be their safety net. I didn't give them the money. They lost the house in November, moved into a small rental across town, 2 bedrooms for 4 people counting the baby. Dad found work at a retail store. Mom was doing data entry from home. Ashley was living with them, still not working, completely dependent. That Christmas, I got one card from Ashley. Inside was a picture of the baby, now almost a year old, with a note. Merry Christmas from your niece Emily. She'd love to meet her uncle someday. We're at 847 Pine Street if you ever want to visit. Ashley. The manipulation was obvious, using the baby to guilt me into contact. But I looked at that picture for a long time. Kid had Ashley's eyes, my dad's nose. Completely innocent in all this family drama. I almost drove over there. Almost. Then I remembered Ashley's smug face when dad suspended me. Remembered years of her lies and manipulations. Remembered my parents choosing her over me every single time. I threw the card away. Bobby asked if I was okay. Told him about the card. About almost caving. Would have been easy to drive over there, he said. Play the hero. Meet the baby. Make peace. Yeah, but nothing would have changed. Ashley would still be the golden child. I'd still be the backup plan. Probably right. I know I'm right. He poured us both coffee. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Takes guts to stick to your principles when family's involved. Thanks. You're doing good, kid. Better than good. Don't let guilt make you forget that. Present day. I'm 22 now. Bobby made me a 50-50 partner last month after 4 years of working together. We're opening a second location next spring. I bought a house. Small, but mine. Fixing it up room by room using skills I learned at the shop. Got a girlfriend. Met her when she brought her car in for brake work. She's a teacher, smart and funny. Doesn't care that I'm a mechanic instead of having some fancy college degree. Likes that I can fix things and work with my hands. My family? Still struggling from what I hear. Dad's working retail management now. Better than before, but not great. Mom's hours are steady, but the pay is low. Ashley's still living with them. Finally got a part-time job at a coffee shop, but it barely covers her expenses. Emily's almost 3. I've never met her. Don't plan to. Last month, Dad showed up at the shop one final time. Didn't ask for money this time. Just wanted to talk. I was wrong, he said. About that day with Ashley. About suspending you. About all of it. Okay. I'm not asking you to come back or forgive us. Just wanted you to know I see it now. How we failed you. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to stay angry. Keep that wall up. But mostly, I just felt tired of carrying it. I appreciate you saying that, I told him. We're proud of you. What you've built here. The man you've become. Little late for that. I know. But I needed to say it. He left. Haven't heard from him since. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. Story 6. Parents kicked me out just because the golden child sister couldn't stand me. 10 years ago, my life basically got flipped upside down because my family, especially my sister Claire, decided to kick me out of the house. And why? Because they thought I was some sort of traitor for figuring out how to pay for my college tuition without their help. I was 18, just about to start college, and suddenly I found myself with nowhere to go. This all happened thanks to Claire, the golden child who always managed to make me look like I was barely worth anything in comparison. Claire is 4 years older than me, and from the time we were kids, it was clear that she was the favorite. Like, not just a little bit. I mean, my parents were obsessed with her. If she got an A, they'd throw her a freaking parade. But if I got an A, it was like, oh, cool. What's for dinner? You get the idea. So I kind of grew up with the mentality that it didn't matter what I did because Claire would always outshine me. By the time she went off to a top business school, my parents were all over it, like she was some sort of prodigy. They paid for everything, her tuition, her apartment, her fancy clothes. Meanwhile, I kept my head down and figured I'd have to do things on my own. So when I got accepted into a reputable college in the UK to study history, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd get a little bit of support. But nope, that wasn't happening. My parents straight up told me they couldn't afford my tuition, which, okay, I get it. College is expensive. But what really pissed me off was that they didn't even want to co-sign a loan. I wasn't asking them to pay the whole thing, just to help me out so I wouldn't be drowning in debt my whole life. But they refused, and we fought about it a lot. Their reasoning? We already paid for Claire's college. We have to think about our future now. Oh, and they were also planning to start some kind of small business around that time, so apparently all their savings were going into that. I was completely stuck. I didn't want to lose the opportunity to go to this college, but it felt like my parents were just throwing obstacles in my way for no reason. They had no problem spending tons of money on Claire, but when it came to me, suddenly they had to be frugal and responsible. I needed help, and it became pretty obvious that they weren't going to give it to me. So, with no other options, I turned to my Aunt Denise. Now, Denise is my dad's older sister, And let me just say, she's like the total opposite of my parents. She's a neurosurgeon and, honestly, way more successful than either of them, but she's also super down to earth. My parents always had this weird tension with her. They'd act all polite at family gatherings, but I could tell they were bitter about how successful she was compared to them. My dad, in particular, hated feeling like she overshadowed him. I didn't really want to get her involved at first, but I was desperate. I reached out to her one day, asking if she'd be willing to help me with the tuition. She didn't even hesitate. She was like, "Of course I'll help. Why didn't you come to me sooner?" But I was terrified that my dad would find out. If he knew I had gone behind his back to ask for money from his sister, he'd lose his mind. So I begged Denise to keep it a secret. Things were fine for a while after that. I figured I was in the clear. My tuition was covered, and I was getting ready to leave for school. That's when Claire decided to ruin everything. To this day, I still don't know how she found out about me asking Aunt Denise for help, but she did. And being Claire, she couldn't just let it go. She had to blow it up into this huge, dramatic thing. One night, I came home after hanging out with some friends, and immediately I knew something was off. All my stuff was packed up in boxes. Everything. My clothes, my books, even my bedding. My parents were sitting in the living room, and Claire was standing there with this smug, self-satisfied look on her face. It felt like I had walked into some twisted intervention. My dad didn't waste any time. He threw a stack of papers at me and said, "Explain this." I had no idea what he was talking about, so I looked at the papers, and that's when I realized Claire had gone full psycho. She had fabricated these fake emails between me and Aunt Denise, where it looked like I was betraying the family, leaking details about the business my parents were planning to start in exchange for Aunt Denise paying for my tuition. I couldn't believe my eyes. Claire had gone through my laptop, found some emails between me and Denise, and then doctored them using Photoshop or whatever. She made it look like I had sold out our family. I was stunned. I tried to explain that it was all fake, but my parents didn't even listen. They just stood there saying, "We trusted you, and you stabbed us in the back." It didn't matter what I said. They believed Claire, because of course they did. They always believed her. It was like I didn't even exist anymore. They told me to pack my things and leave, right then and there. I was officially kicked out of the house because of a complete lie. I begged them to reconsider. I didn't want to be a burden on Aunt Denise, especially after she had already agreed to pay for my tuition. But my parents didn't care. They said I was a traitor, and they wanted nothing to do with me. So that was it. I left with nothing but the clothes on my back and a few boxes of my stuff, and I moved in with Aunt Denise. Honestly, I don't know how I would have survived if it weren't for her. She took me in without a second thought and treated me like actual family, something I hadn't felt in years. While my parents were busy worshiping Claire and focusing on their future business, Denise was the only one who really cared about me. And for that, I'll always be grateful. But to this day, I can't shake the memory of that night. Walking into my house and seeing all my stuff packed up, my parents staring at me like I was a criminal, and Claire standing there with that smug look on her face knowing she had won. So there I was, kicked out of my own house, standing on Aunt Denise's doorstep with my life in boxes. I was still processing what the hell had just happened. It felt like a bad dream. I mean, how do you go from thinking you're part of a family to being homeless in one night? The whole thing was so surreal, but at the same time, I couldn't say I was that surprised. My parents had always made it clear that Claire came first, but I guess I never thought they'd take it this far. Denise, being the angel that she is, welcomed me with open arms. She didn't ask a million questions. She didn't pry. She just saw that I was hurting and told me that her house was my house for as long as I needed. That kind of kindness? Man, it hit me right in the gut because I realized right then that I had never felt anything close to that from my own parents. So, I moved in with her. It was strange at first, waking up in her guest room, looking around at a house that wasn't mine, but over time, it started to feel more like home than the place I grew up in ever had. We started getting closer, talking more about everything. Turns out, Aunt Denise knew a lot more about my parents and their BS than I ever realized. She'd been keeping her distance from them for years, only showing up to family events because she felt obligated. She told me something that blew my mind. Apparently, my dad's grudge against her started way before I was born. Denise had always been more successful. She went to med school, got married to a great guy, who unfortunately passed away young, and was living her life. Meanwhile, my dad was doing okay, but every time they met up, he'd get weirdly competitive. Denise said that their relationship basically became a game of who could look better to the rest of the family. But instead of just being proud of his sister, he resented her. And it wasn't just career stuff. My dad felt overshadowed in every way, financially, socially, everything. I guess that jealousy bled over into how he treated me. Denise had figured all this out years ago but kept quiet because she didn't want to make things worse for me. Now that I was living with her, though, she told me everything. It was like she was trying to fill in all the gaps in my life that I hadn't been able to make sense of before. Why my parents never seemed to care about what I did, why they always bent over backward for Claire. It all boiled down to some weird family dynamic that I didn't even know existed. Living with Denise was great, but the thing is, I couldn't completely relax. I kept waiting for my parents to call, for Claire to show up out of nowhere, or for them to apologize for what they did. But of course, that never happened. Days turned into weeks, and nothing. Not a single text, not a single call. At first, I was angry. Like, really angry. How could they just toss me aside like I was nothing? Then the anger kind of faded, and I started to feel numb about the whole thing. It was like my brain was shutting off all my emotions just so I could function. Denise, though, she was amazing. She never pushed me to talk about what happened unless I wanted to. She let me take my time figuring things out. She even helped me get all my stuff sorted for school, making sure I had everything I needed before I left for the UK. I swear, if it weren't for her, I don't know how I would have gotten through that time. But even with her support, the silence from my parents was deafening. You'd think after kicking your kid out, you'd at least check up on them, right? But no. I guess I shouldn't have expected anything different, but I still did. One afternoon, about a month after the whole ordeal, I got a text from Claire. I remember it so clearly because it was just as obnoxious as she was. All it said was, "Hope you're doing okay. By the way, don't leave your laptop lying around." That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she had done. Just a little smirk in text form, reminding me that she was the one who got me thrown out. I stared at the screen, feeling my blood boil. She was taunting me, plain and simple. I didn't respond. What was the point? Claire wasn't the type to feel guilty about anything. In her mind, she had won some weird family game, and that was that. I thought about texting back something snarky, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. She'd just get off on it. So I blocked her number and tried to move on. It wasn't easy. Every time I looked at my phone, part of me was still waiting for something from my parents. Maybe a message from my mom, saying she regretted everything, or even a passive-aggressive email from my dad, pretending like nothing happened. But nope, radio silence. In the months that followed, Denise and I got into a solid routine. She became more than just my aunt. She became my confidant, my friend, and basically the only family I had left. I started to see how messed up my parents really were. They'd spent so long focusing on Claire, trying to mold her into some perfect daughter, that they completely missed out on everything else. And when Claire finally messed up, which she eventually would, it would be too late for them to fix it. Around the time I was getting ready to leave for school, I got another message, this time from my dad. It was short and direct. Good luck in the UK. That was it. No apology, no explanation, nothing. It felt like a slap in the face. After everything, all he had to say was good luck? I didn't even know how to respond, so I didn't. I just deleted the message and tried not to think about it. The day I left for the UK, Denise drove me to the airport. She hugged me and told me how proud she was, how she knew I'd do great things. It was the first time in my life that someone in my family had said those words to me, and it hit me harder than I expected. I got on that plane feeling like I was leaving more than just my home behind. I was leaving behind the part of me that had always tried to seek approval from my parents. From that moment on, I decided I didn't need them anymore. I had Denise, I had my future, and I had myself. If they wanted to reach out, fine, but I wasn't going to waste any more energy chasing after people who clearly didn't care about me. I was done. So life in the UK was going great. I settled into college, made some friends, and for the first time in years, I wasn't constantly thinking about my family. I won't say I forgot about them, I don't think that's possible, but they definitely weren't on my mind as much anymore. I was focused on my studies, figuring out my future, and just trying to enjoy life without the drama that came with living under my parents' shadow. But of course, just when things were going smoothly, something had to come and mess it up. I finished college and I came back to my city. I found a very good high-paying job, and then I got a call from my mom. Yeah, my mom. The same woman who hadn't spoken to me since the day they kicked me out. It was totally unexpected. I was sitting in my dorm room going over some notes for a paper when my phone buzzed. I saw her name pop up, and for a second I thought I was seeing things. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Should I answer it? Ignore it? After everything that had happened, why would she be calling me now? I let it ring a few more times, and then, against my better judgment, I picked up. Hello? I said, trying to sound calm, even though my heart was pounding. There was a pause on the other end, like she wasn't sure what to say. Finally, she spoke. Hi, it's your mother. No kidding. Who else would it be? I didn't say that, though. I just stayed quiet, waiting for her to explain why she was calling after almost 2 years of nothing. She hesitated again, and then out of nowhere, she said, We need to talk. I couldn't help but scoff. Now she wanted to talk. After everything? It was so typical of her. But even though I was annoyed, a part of me was curious. What could possibly be so important that she was reaching out after all this time? About what? I asked, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. We, your father and I, we want to see you, she said, stumbling over her words like she was trying to figure out how to phrase it right. I could already tell where this was going. They didn't actually want to see me because they missed me or felt bad for kicking me out. There was something they needed, and I had a pretty good guess about what it was. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Why? I asked bluntly. She didn't answer right away, which pretty much confirmed my suspicions. When she finally did speak, her voice was quieter, like she was trying to sound all motherly and concerned. Your dad and I, we've been going through a hard time. Things haven't been easy since the pandemic. There it was, the real reason behind the call. It was exactly what I thought. Money problems. I hadn't heard much about their business since I left, but I knew it wasn't doing well. Denise had mentioned something in passing about how their shop wasn't thriving the way they had expected, and with the pandemic, it made sense that they'd be struggling. But I wasn't going to jump in and save them, not after everything they had done to me. Okay, and, I said, my voice flat. I wasn't about to make this easy for her. Your sister, Claire, she's been managing things for us, but, she started, and that's when I cut her off. Let me guess, I said, already knowing where this was headed. Claire screwed it all up? There was a long pause on her end, which was answer enough. Of course, Claire had messed it up. I don't know why they were surprised. She was always more interested in looking good than actually doing the hard work. They had put all their faith in her, and now it was backfiring. My mom let out a shaky breath. Things haven't been going as planned, she admitted, and we need help. I laughed. I couldn't help it. After everything, after throwing me out, cutting me off, letting Claire walk all over me, now they wanted my help? The audacity of it all was unreal. Unbelievable, I muttered under my breath. What's so funny? My mom asked, sounding genuinely confused, like she couldn't understand why I wasn't jumping at the chance to swoop in and save the day. You're serious? You actually think I'm going to help you? I said, my voice rising. I could feel the anger bubbling up, all the emotions I'd been pushing down for the past 2 years coming to the surface. We're your parents, she said, her voice wavering. We made mistakes, but we need you. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. You didn't just make mistakes, Mom. You kicked me out of the house. You believed Claire's lies over your own son. You haven't spoken to me in years, and now you need me. And suddenly, I'm supposed to drop everything and come running? She was quiet after that. I could tell she didn't know what to say. She probably wasn't used to me standing up for myself like this. Back when I was still living at home, I would have just gone along with whatever they said, hoping it would keep the peace. But not anymore. I had changed, and I wasn't going to let them walk all over me again. Finally, she spoke, but her tone had changed. She wasn't trying to be all soft and caring anymore. Now she sounded irritated, like she couldn't believe I was being so difficult. We're still your family, she said sharply. You owe us at least that much. That was it. That was the final straw. I didn't owe them anything. In fact, they were the ones who owed me. An apology, for starters. But I wasn't holding my breath on that one. I don't owe you a damn thing, I said, my voice cold. If you need help, go ask Claire. She's your golden child, remember? Without waiting for her to respond, I hung up the phone. My heart was pounding, and my hands were shaking, but I felt a strange sense of relief. I had finally said what I needed to say. They could figure out their mess on their own. I wasn't going to be part of it. That night, I called Aunt Denise and told her what happened. She wasn't surprised at all. They've been relying on Claire for years, she said. It was only a matter of time before it all caught up to them. We talked for a while, and by the end of the call, I felt even more certain that I'd made the right decision. My parents had chosen Claire over me, and now they were paying the price. As harsh as it sounded, it wasn't my responsibility to fix their mistakes. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I didn't need their approval or their acceptance. I had my own life now, and I wasn't about to let them drag me back into their toxic mess. I had done my part by surviving their betrayal. Now,
It was their turn to deal with the consequences. Update 1. I thought I was done with all the family drama after that phone call with my mom. Honestly, I felt pretty good about how things went. I had finally stood up for myself and made it clear that I wasn't going to be their safety net. I figured they'd just give up and go back to depending on Claire, but I underestimated my sister's ability to stir the pot. Because, of course, Claire wasn't going to let me get away that easily. It was about 2 weeks after the call with my mom when something weird happened. I was having a pretty normal Saturday afternoon just cleaning up around my place when I heard a knock on the door. Now, I don't really get visitors. I live alone, and most of my friends know to text before they come over, so I was a little confused. I peeked through the peephole, and guess who was standing outside? Yep, Claire. For a second, I thought maybe I was seeing things. Like, what was she doing here? She hadn't spoken to me in years except for that one stupid text about my laptop, and now she was just showing up at my door like everything was fine. My gut reaction was to just ignore her, but I knew Claire well enough to know that she wouldn't leave until she got what she wanted. I opened the door, and before I could even say anything, she smiled, like we were best friends or something. Hey, she said, all bubbly and fake. It's been a while. I just stared at her for a second, completely caught off guard. Yeah, it has. What are you doing here, Claire? She looked at me with this overly sweet expression, like she thought she could charm her way into my good graces. I wanted to talk, she said, tilting her head slightly. Can I come in? I crossed my arms, not moving from the doorway. About what? I asked, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. Her smile faltered for a second, but she recovered quickly. Come on, can we just talk inside? It's important. I should have said no. I should have just told her to leave right then and there. But my curiosity got the better of me. I stepped aside and let her in, though I didn't bother making her feel welcome. I didn't offer her a seat, and I didn't ask if she wanted anything to drink. She was lucky I was even letting her into my space after everything she'd done. She walked in and looked around, like she was taking in the place. Nice apartment, she said, like she was trying to make small talk. I didn't respond. I wasn't here for pleasantries. Okay, Claire, I said, getting straight to the point. What do you want? She sighed dramatically, like she was already exhausted from whatever game she was playing. Mom told me about your conversation, she said, folding her arms. She's pretty upset, you know. I raised an eyebrow. Upset? She kicked me out of the house, Claire. What exactly does she have to be upset about? Claire rolled her eyes, like I was the one being unreasonable. Look, I'm not here to rehash all that. We both know you've always been difficult. I almost laughed at how casually she said that. Difficult? I repeated. Are you serious right now? You fabricated emails to get me kicked out of the house. That's difficult. She waved her hand dismissively. That's ancient history. I came here because I want to make things right. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. You want to make things right? I asked, skepticism dripping from every word. Yeah, she said, nodding like this was the most reasonable thing in the world. I know things got complicated with the family, and maybe I overreacted back then, but I think it's time to put all that behind us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You think you overreacted? I said, struggling to keep my voice even. Claire, you destroyed my relationship with our parents. You lied about me, manipulated them, and now you're standing here like none of that matters anymore. Her smile faded a little, and I could see that she was getting frustrated. I didn't come here to argue, okay? I came because I need your help. Ah, there it was. The real reason she was standing in my apartment. Of course, Claire wasn't here to apologize or to make amends. She needed something from me. I felt my jaw clench as I stared at her, waiting for her to continue. I've been trying to keep the business going, she said, finally dropping the fake sweetness. But it's been really hard. The pandemic hit us pretty badly, and I'm doing everything I can, but it's not enough. Mom and Dad don't want to admit it, but we're on the verge of losing everything. I crossed my arms, not feeling an ounce of sympathy. So, let me guess, you want me to help bail you out? Claire shifted uncomfortably. I'm not asking for a handout, she said defensively. I just thought we could, I don't know, figure something out together. You're doing well for yourself, right? I figured you'd want to help the family. I couldn't believe her. She was trying to guilt trip me into saving the family business that she had driven into the ground. You figured wrong, I said flatly. Claire blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Wait, what do you mean? I mean, I'm not helping you, I said, my voice firm. Not after everything you did. You ruined my life, Claire. You turned my own parents against me. And now that you're in trouble, you think I'm just going to forget all of that and swoop in to save you? No. She stared at me dumbfounded. For the first time in her life, Claire didn't seem to know what to say. But We're family, she said weakly, her voice losing some of its confidence. I shook my head. We stopped being family the day you made it your mission to destroy me. Claire's face went pale. She wasn't used to hearing no, and I could tell she was struggling to process it. After a long, awkward silence, she stood up. Fine, she said coldly, if that's how you want it. That's how it's going to be, I said, standing my ground. You made your choices, Claire. Now you have to deal with the consequences. Without another word, she stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a minute, letting the tension drain out of me. Part of me felt bad, like maybe I was too harsh. But then I remembered everything she'd put me through, and that guilt faded fast. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life. I wasn't living in Claire's shadow anymore. I wasn't the second choice or the scapegoat. I was finally free from all of it. Update 2. I thought that after Claire stormed out of my apartment, things would go quiet. Like, she would finally get the message that I was done with her and the whole family drama. But of course, I underestimated just how stubborn she could be. It wasn't even a full week later when the next wave hit. And this time, it wasn't Claire knocking on my door. It was both my parents. It was a Saturday again. Funny how these things always seem to happen on my days off. I was just sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone when the knock came. It wasn't soft either. It was one of those heavy, insistent knocks that tells you whoever's on the other side isn't leaving anytime soon. I got up, already having a feeling about who it might be, and when I opened the door, there they were, my mom and dad, standing together like some kind of united front. My dad looked uncomfortable, like he didn't really want to be there. But my mom? She had that look in her eye, the one that said she was determined to fix whatever mess had been made, even if it meant bulldozing her way through. I sighed, leaning against the doorframe. What do you want? My mom gave me a strained smile, trying to keep things friendly, I guess. Can we come in and talk? We need to sort some things out. I was tempted to slam the door in their faces, but part of me figured that if I didn't let them in now, they'd just keep showing up. So, with an exaggerated sigh, I stepped aside and let them in. They walked in, glancing around the place like they were expecting something more than a basic apartment. My dad stayed quiet, but my mom went straight for the couch, sitting down and patting the seat next to her like I was some little kid she was trying to console. I'll stand, I said flatly, crossing my arms. All right, she said with a tight smile. Look, we know things have been difficult between us. Difficult? I repeated, raising an eyebrow. That's what you're calling it? My dad finally spoke up, his voice low and gruff. We didn't come here to argue. Then what did you come here for? I asked, not even bothering to hide my frustration. Because I'm pretty sure we've already been over everything. Claire tried, you tried, and I made myself clear. I'm not helping. My mom's smile wavered a little. She probably wasn't used to me talking back like this. That's not why we're here, she said, leaning forward slightly. We're here because we want to apologize. I almost laughed. Apologize? For what exactly? Kicking me out? Believing Claire's lies? Or was it that you didn't even bother checking in on me for 2 years? My mom's face tightened, and my dad shifted uncomfortably, looking like he wanted to be anywhere but here. It was clear they weren't expecting me to throw it back in their faces like that. We know we made mistakes, my mom said, her voice quieter now. But we're family, and family has to stick together. I could feel my patience wearing thin. This was just more of the same. Every time something went wrong, they'd pull out the family card like it was supposed to erase everything that happened. But I wasn't falling for it this time. You guys are only here because you need something from me, I said bluntly. If things hadn't gone south with the business, I wouldn't even be hearing from you. Let's not pretend this is about family. There was a moment of silence, and then my dad finally spoke up, his voice rough, but more honest than anything I'd heard from him in years. You're right. That caught me off guard. I blinked, staring at him. What? You're right, he repeated, sighing heavily. We screwed up. We believed Claire, we pushed you out, and we didn't even think twice about it. And now, well, now things are falling apart and we're desperate. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't expecting him to actually admit it. My mom, on the other hand, looked like she was trying not to lose her cool. Clearly, she hadn't planned for him to just lay it all out like that. I appreciate the honesty, I said after a long pause. But that doesn't change anything. My mom cut in then, her voice sharper. It doesn't change the fact that we need you, and you owe us, after everything we've done for you. And there it was again, that sense of entitlement. They really believed I owed them something just because they were my parents. Like all the years of neglect and favoritism didn't matter, and now that they were in trouble, I was supposed to bail them out. I don't owe you anything,
I said, my voice cold. Not after the way you treated me. You made your choice when you believed Claire over me, when you threw me out and didn't even check if I was okay. Now you want me to save you? That's not how this works. My dad didn't say anything. He just sat there staring at the floor like he was ashamed. But my mom? She wasn't done yet. We're your parents, she said, her voice rising. We raised you, we took care of you, and now you're just going to abandon us? I shook my head, almost feeling sorry for her at this point. You didn't take care of me. Aunt Denise did. You chose Claire, and now you're stuck with her. That's on you. My mom looked like she was about to explode, but my dad put a hand on her arm, stopping her from saying whatever was about to come out of her mouth. He stood up, looking me in the eye for the first time since they walked in. We understand, he said, his voice steady but sad. We're not going to push you anymore. We just needed to try. For a second, I almost felt bad for him. But then I remembered everything they had put me through, and that sympathy disappeared. I hope you figure it out, I said, stepping toward the door and opening it for them. But I'm not going to be part of it. My dad nodded, like he'd expected that. My mom, though, gave me one last look, half angry, half pleading. But when she saw I wasn't budging, she stood up and followed him out. As they left, I closed the door behind them and stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle in. I'd done it. I had finally stood up to them, and for the first time it felt like I was really free.